religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jar.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another edition of Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be focusing on the investigation into the alleged murder and assassination attempt at the home of former Chief Justice Gloria Musu-Scott. A lot of things have happened since we heard that armed robbery which left one person dead at the home of the former Chief Justice. A lot has taken place. We're going to delve into those. But before we go into our topic today, we're going to talk about the Nigerian elections. What can we learn from the elections in Nigeria, and how is it applicable or not applicable to the Liberian elections scheduled for October 10, 2023? With me to discuss all this on Tough Talking Thursday, I have Mrs. Carl Famble. She is FOL Public Policy Analyst, joining us from Metro Atlanta. Carl, welcome to the show.
Always my pleasure to be here.
I also have our government consultant, Mr. Ahmed K. Salif, who's joining us from Minneapolis. Mr. Salif, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Let's do it. Thank you.
We also have Dr. Abdullah Dukle. Dr. Dukle is one of the panelists tonight. He's a former, he has worked in the executive mansion twice under President Salif and under interim president, Dr. Amos Claudio Sawyer. Dr. Duke, welcome to the show. You are muted, Dr. Duke.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Because we are talking about all the investigations and the police and the armed robbery and all that, we need a law enforcement practitioner. He's a criminal justice practitioner and a law enforcement officer right here in the United States, Mr. Alfred Johnson. Mr. Johnson, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Dennis, and thanks to everyone for the opportunity.
Talking about elections, talking about crime, we have someone who is very keen on the numbers. Calebo Gonglo, the founder of the African Math Genius Project. Mr. Gonglo, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
My pleasure, and I'm happy to welcome Carl back here.
Carl, welcome back to Tough Talking Thursday. Here we talk tough. And before we start our main topic tonight, which is the investigation in the assassination attempt, as you call it, and also the murder in the home of the former Chief Justice and former Justice Minister Gloria Musu-Scott. We're going to look at the Nigerian elections. Elections took place on February 25 in Nigeria. And these elections result, we want to see how these things look, because we are also having elections in 2023, that's October. We want to look at the Nigerian elections and see what lessons we can learn from that. So here are the results. And the results are Bola Tinubu of APC won the elections with 8.7 million votes. Next is Atiku Abubakar, who is 76-year-old, by the way. Bola is 70 years old. I just wanted to include the ages so that you'll see if we see any similarity here. Atiku Abubakar came second from the PDP with 6.9 million votes. That represents 29%. Peter Obi of the Labour Party, 6.1 votes. That represents 25%. And Rabio Kwankwaso of NNPP with 1.4 million votes. That represents 6.23%. We have, there were 18 candidates altogether, so 4 with this number of votes. Then the rest of the candidates came up with 2.7%. That is 684,000. Total vote turnout is 24 million plus. I also want to show you that registered voters in these elections, there were 93.4 million. The valid votes that were counted was 24 plus million. Invalid votes, 939,000. So the total vote cast were 24.9 million. And guess what? Out of the 93 registered voters, we have 24.9 million, meaning 68.5 million did not vote. Well, there has been a steady decline in the number of votes. And don't quote me too much on these percentages, but since 2003, voters turnout has been declining. In 2003, 55% voted. 2008, 49%. 2011, 48%. 2015, 43%. 2019, 35%. And this year, 26%. That's a little bit of what went down in Nigeria. Let me start with our numbers guy, Mr. Kalebo Gonglo. Based on the results and everything that I've said and everything that you follow in the Nigerian elections, what lesson can we learn as Liberians, and how is it applicable or not applicable to the Liberian elections slated for October 10, 2013? Mr. Gonglo.
Thank you, Dennis. There are many things we can learn from it. We can devote, in fact, the entire show to this if you want to just concentrate on lessons learned. One lesson that stands out clearly is that the divided opposition is problematic. If you add all of the votes of the opposition leaders, if they were united, they would have defeated the ruling party. I mean, that's one clear message that's right there. Just look at the number quickly. He won by 8.7 million. So if you add that, if you add the 6.9 and the 6.1 million and 1.9 or 4 million and all these, it was going to be a landslide. Okay? So that's one lesson. The other lesson to learn is Liberia is for the first time introducing biometric registration. We should be cautiously happy because Nigeria used biometric voter registration. We don't know, because I think it was probably the first time also in Nigeria. We don't know how much they impact the voter turnout because there were glitches, there were other problems on the date of voting. They play in a way, in a role, and maybe having people to have to wait too long and they get discouraged not to even vote. So we need to also look to dig a little bit deeper. And the other thing, lesson I think we can learn also would be that we should be vigilant. Listen to article, listening to Obi and these leading opposition leaders, listening to them. I think there are a lot of things that happen on the day of election. And solid, when election takes place, we look for validation from international community. And I can tell anybody for free, I stand to be correct. I have not seen any election in the world where probably, I want to talk about the election with, there was an election in Nigeria that I want to believe probably international observer had different verdict on it, but it's not something that frequently happens, okay? They will always recognize that there were challenges in the process. There were other issues, but at the end, there's always a statement that will issue and say, these things we recommend for future election to take care of these issues so it can reoccur. But those things were not sufficient to alter the outcome of the voters. That I've been in a room at least twice in East Timor and in Kenya, and I've seen people concord those statements, because the country put in millions of dollars, international community put in millions of dollars, and they also look at the bigger picture. If you discredit the election, are you going to set the country ablaze? Do you want to take the responsibility that because you said this was a fraudulent election, you give validation to violent forces to stampede into power or to overthrow the government? So international community is usually careful on what to say on these matters. So we may be in Liberia hoping that, we want to take statement to the American embassy, want to go to EU. We should be careful. If we can do certain things for ourselves, I guarantee you that on the date of election, if Georgia cheats, the next day EU will be saying, here, let's move on.
Thank you. I should also mention that the last time Atiku and Abubakar and Peter Obi ran on the same ticket, this time they did not. In these elections, they came out with around 13 million votes. Let me go to Alfred. Alfred, even though you are here for the for this, but I want you to put your mouth in this one. What can we learn from these elections?
So Dennis, first of all, good evening to everybody. It appears like there's some level of familiarity. Everybody seems to be familiar with each other except for me. So I would like to briefly introduce myself. I am Alfred Johnson, who came to the United States in 2006. I have my associate in criminal justice from Northampton Community College. I have my bachelor's from Westchester University in criminal justice in 2012, August. I have my first master's in criminal justice from Westchester, of course, also in 2013. I gained employment with Prince George County Police Department in March of 2014, where I've been for the last 9 years. I currently hold the rank of sergeant. I went back to school in 2016 at American University in DC. I got my second master's in public administration and policy. I'm currently a PhD student at St. John's University studying Homeland Security. So that's that about me. When it comes to the elections, I believe there are a couple of lessons to be learned. I'm surprised the age of Peter Obi or something. I'm surprised his age because he had a lot of young people backing him, but I just realized he's around 60 years old. So one of the lessons learned from this election is that the old heads still run Africa. You know, the older people still run elections in Africa. They still control the corridor of power. That's one lesson. Another thing is what Mr. Gongro said. As far as unity is concerned, it tells you that if you don't unite as an opposition bloc, you're not going to win the election. And the sad part about the Nigerian process is the fact that it seems like simple majority wins. I mean, you don't need to be 50%. At least in the case of Liberia, if you got to hit that 50% threshold, 50 plus 1, before you can be considered a winner. But Nigeria, if a person can win 25% and still win elections, even though they'll be presiding over a divided country, but the fact is the idea is that they win and then they can focus on uniting the country. So that's another thing. The opposition has to come together. We saw that in play in 2020, I believe, when Delon won massively in Monserrate County. That's the formula they need to go by. But if they don't go by that formula this year, it's a guarantee that Georgia is going to go to the second round. And if they don't go by that formula, I don't see how they can be united in the second round. So it just goes to show that African elections are still difficult. The international community, like Mr. Gonglo said, is not going to outrightly dismiss the election and call for a new election because there are a lot of implications that they don't want to. Too many things will happen. Too many balls have to roll that they don't want to do that. They will just say in the name of peace and just move on from there. So that's just my view on the elections.
Dr. Duke, I want you to bring in are there any parallels to Liberia? When I put the age on the board, you smile, right? When the elections were coming, they said we heard that first of all the victory of Bola Tinubu, people are saying this represents the old folks. So this is Mr. Boakai. Other people are saying, no, this represents the incumbent. When the elections were about to, people from the Alexander Cummings camp say, Mr. Cummings is the new Obi. Now, when the results came and they lost, they say, oh, then the Cummings people started running away from Obi now and say, well, Obi, if Obi had gone on our team, we would have won. So what are some of the parallels you can draw here, Dr. Duke?
Thank you, Dennis, and hello to everyone. Mr. Gonglo, Ahmed Johnson, and Sister Ko that I have not met before online. I've seen you many times on the show. It's it's easy to draw parallels, and it's very easy to make to compare numbers, but when you dealing with different settings, you have to be very careful how you draw conclusions. I don't think what applies in Nigeria is necessarily it's going to happen in Liberia. I don't know. People talk about unity. Yes, that's a lesson to learn, but people who run for president want to be president. And they get it by their ego at one point, and they get it by their own agenda, and they get it by probably their dislike for somebody who's in power or who's not. So I don't want to draw parallels. I think Boakai will run on his own strength. Cummings will do the same thing, Gonglo, and anybody else. But I think those three people are the faces of the opposition, really. How they want to run it, how they want to take, lessons from Nigeria and say, okay, we have to do this, we have to go this way. That's up to them, really. I don't want to, because I talked to both of them, so to sort of know all of them politically. So I don't want to be saying, oh, this is what we should do, this is what you should do. Because really it comes down to their personality, their egos, and their own sense of worth. So if they think they can make it, they will go ahead and do it. I don't want to draw parallels, really. I don't want to draw any parallels between Nigeria and, except that young people, they like rallies, but they don't always vote. That we learn. Young people like rallies, but they don't always go out to vote. We seen that in Liberia in 2005, when we locked down the city of Monrovia completely. You couldn't move a car an inch, but they didn't go out to vote. So that's my point.
So one more thing here, we see that out of the 93 million registered voters, 68.5 million did not go to the polls to vote. What does this mean to you? Number one, does it mean that they probably inflated the numbers? Does it mean people actually more than half of the registered voters sat home, or they are confusing eligible voters with registered voters? What can you read from that? Or is it that people really don't care about who wins, or they have no hope and no trust in the political system? Dr. Duke, I want you to continue.
Oh, well, I think you could say both. One, maybe they're confusing eligible voters and registered voters. And then again, if you have 96,000 million people, and then you only have 24 million people showing up, it means, well, at the places where people couldn't vote, that was documented. A lot of places where people couldn't vote, there were challenges with the machines or the voting process. And also, it could just be Nigerians are saying, okay, you know what? Well, among these three, we're going to have the same government, we're going to have the same mess, so we're going to lead the same country anyway. So they don't really care. And that's probably the problem. I mean, in the US, I think at one point, Reagan was elected with 36% of American voters, if I remember. People still talk about him as one of the greatest presidents, but he was elected with 36 or 39% of elected, US voters. So it depends where Nigeria is. Maybe they're comfortable with their democracy. So comfortable they say the state can run itself. We don't even have to vote. It could be very cynical, a very cynical approach to elections.
Carl, what's your take? I've seen people describing this as the worst election ever in Nigeria. So what do you make of the Nigerian elections, and what parallels can you draw between the Nigerian election and the upcoming Liberian elections?
Well, the first thing is, I don't know that people believe any longer that elections make a difference. I think people, especially younger voters, are really not behind politicians because they think these people can change the country as much as they're behind them just because they want to change the politician that's in power. And there's a huge difference. And if that really is the only motivating factor, we're really angry Akohiri, we really want to change him and not necessarily focused on we want to bring someone who's going to affect change in the country. If you've lived for 2 or 3 or 4 election cycles in Nigeria, people start to realize that it doesn't really matter who's in power any longer. It's going to be the same old 6 and 7. It's just a different puppet being controlled by the same puppeteer. And so as young people in Nigeria become more socially, politically conscious and more aware of the dynamics of the global power structure, they start to realize that their votes, their elected officials, the governments are all proxies for, the powers that have economic interest in their countries. You see them saying this a lot. A lot of the youth leaders in Nigeria, they articulate this very well on social media. And I think in that sense, I see some similarities there, but I see far more political consciousness and awareness of their circumstances from what I see Nigerian student activists articulating compared to what I see in Liberia. I don't really think that we want to look at Nigeria and say Nigerians are not sophisticated because of this election and who won. We don't know if this was a legitimate result or not. I judge the competency of the voters by what they actually articulate and what they say. And I think that when it comes to understanding politics and the world, many of these people that I see as student leaders, young people in Nigeria, I'm very impressed with their depth of understanding. Many of them seem well-read and well-educated on the history of African politics and the context of the present. Comparing that to Liberia, I don't see that as much. That's not saying that we don't have any young people in Liberia that are socially conscious, but we seem to have a lot of people who chant and chant and speak rhetoric, but don't really have, when it comes down to in-depth analysis and understanding of our position in the world, I'm not seeing that same level of articulation among the young people in Liberia. So because of that, there's some analogies, but not a whole lot. And I concur with all the other panelists that if in fact you're going to vote and you believe that your candidate, or you just want to change someone and not necessarily believing that your candidate is going to change things, the opposition absolutely has to unite, especially when going against an incumbent party. It's very difficult to defeat someone who's an incumbent. They have all of the power. They can, finger the results. But a united opposition stands a far better chance than, a bickering, divided opposition.
But Carl, in this instance, does Bola Tinubu represent George Weah or Mr. Boakai?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The incumbent, does Bola Tinubu, who won, does he represent Mr. Boakai or Mr. Weah? Because that's the debate I heard, right? They say, with this victory means the old people can still win.
I mean, if he's an incumbent, clearly he represents Weah. I mean, Weah's not young, right? The average Liberian is 17 years old. What is this thing that we think George Weah is he's not a young man. He may be younger than Cummings. He may be younger than Boakai, but he's not young. This obsession we have with youth, instead of talking about ideas and understanding and principles and things that are important, we worry about people's ages. I mean, being young doesn't make you competent or energetic or correct. It doesn't make any sense. Human beings, if you're a bad person, if you're not very smart, it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. If you're brilliant, if you understand the world and you have, a command of what needs to happen to uplift your people and, advance the cause of your country, it doesn't matter how old you are. So this idea, this obsession that we have with youth, I think is absurd. It's too simplistic. In this country, in the United States, everyone's jumping behind Bernie Sanders because he's idealistic and he represents, the vision of equality or equity, really, equity and distribution of wealth among the people and all this kind of stuff that a lot of young people gravitate towards. And Bernie Sanders is an elderly man. But again, we're not talking about ideology. We're not talking about principle. You just say, oh, we want young person to run. We want youth. We want youth. You know, what does that even mean? You know, we have a mayor that's relatively young and is obsessed with the idea that he thinks he's young. He thinks he's the youngest person ever to have a job in his mind. You know, and look at the incompetence that comes out of that office. So youth is only an asset if you're prepared and you're intelligent and capable.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Salif here. Mr. Salif, with everything that I've asked, but I want to add this piece, right? Anytime we go into elections, we look at sometimes the big names, the top three. I mean, for a long time now, we've been hearing we are Boubacar Cummings. Then later on came Councillor Gonglo. So it's like we already know how the election is going to turn out even before there had really been no surprises. In these elections, we were hearing about these people, Tinubu, Atiku, Tinubu, Abubakar, and Obi, and it came out like that. I was kind of a little disappointed that all others, 18 minus 4, 14 other candidates could not even reach 1 million. Does this look like bad news for Councillor Gonglo?
Well, thank you. I mean, you know, like Dr. Duplo was saying, it's really difficult to draw parallel between Nigeria and Liberia for many reasons. You know, first of all, Nigeria is it's the largest, most populous country in Africa. You know, 220 million people. You're looking at 93 million registered voters alone. And I have to say, the population is very educated, very sophisticated. I mean, we look at civil society, for example, or the political participation in these elections in Nigeria, the youth really, they energized campaign politics in this cycle. They want to change. The change they were calling for was in, you know, Tinubu, who was the same, carrying on carrying on the current, you know, APC, the current ruling party's agenda, essentially, right? They didn't want that. They want to change. They wanted to break that cycle, but they didn't get it, like you said. And so that's that. On the Gonglo side, I mean, if you look at Peter Obi and other less-known candidates, these candidates, there was reported that they didn't have resources, like Obi didn't have resources to cover. I was reading an account in the Washington Post, a large swath of the country that Obi couldn't really campaign effectively in those parts of the country. And so that really impacted, and some of the smaller candidates too. In terms of Tinubu, you could, of course, the incumbent machinery was behind him, right? So the GOTV get out, the vote efforts was really massive for him across the country. This man had been governor of Lagos State. So, and Lagos is a massive area. The argument in this Nigerian election, there were three major issues. So look, the economy is terrible. Tinubu was a governor. He turned the economy around. He may be old, but this guy has experience. He knows something about economics, or at least governance in that respect. So some are arguing that you may argue, you know, the election results based on how the technology worked and how INEC perform and things like that. But you know, you can't just say Tinubu is not a legitimate winner in this election. So the Gonglo comparison is really difficult to make, because what we're hearing from the Gonglo camp, or not a camp, but a lot of analysts and observers are saying Councillor Gonglo doesn't have the resources right now. Maybe they will show up later on to cover the country and really put a kind of political organization together and the messaging behind it. Because to win election at the end of the day is awakening, that inspiring people to see you as the one who will change their lives, will change the country as a better alternative, and therefore, people should follow you. Council Gonglo has, good history on rule of law. Good, he talks about corruption. He has a history, on some of these things. But that alone can't win you election. What wins you election is, they say, look, those good campaigners are rewarded on election day. If you campaign really well, and it has elements, you have to have all of those things together as resources that brings them together: money, people, and people. By people, I mean sophisticated people who understand electoral politics, who can do the research, who can do analysis, who can go across, and who can push your agenda so that in front of the people that can, bring out that enthusiasm. We haven't seen that on the Congo side. In terms of just Liberia, Nigeria, again, I go to the people problem. This Nigeria is the largest country in terms of population, and the economy in West Africa. You can lose 70% of the GDP of ECOWAS is Nigerian. You're talking here, this is a powerhouse. So it's really difficult to do that Gonglo and the other less known candidates in this Nigerian cycle comparison. It's a difficult question to ask.
Thank you. And I know Mr. Gonglo want to take a stab at that also, but let me throw in something else. Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar, they ran in 2019 against Buhari, right? And they lost. Peter Obi was seen as a fresh face. But until last year, he broke away. Probably wanted to be at the top of the ticket and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm moving to form my own party. And we could clearly see that with both of them having 6.9, 6.1 million, all things being equal, their combined votes would have made them, the winning ticket. Same scenario with CPP breaking away, and people say, hey, younger Cummings go on the older Bwaka, right? I'm not trying to do ageism here, but that was the argument, right? And it happens that they broke away, they lost. So people are drawing that parallel as well. Okay, does that make sense? And then the Gonglo factor being lesser known and still not just like the other parties have performed. Mr. Gonglo, I want you to take that also.
Well, Dennis, before I take I make comment on that, let me just go back a little bit to the Nigeria-Liberia comparison, where I understand some of the caution or the cautious approach by Ahmed and Dr. Doe on the question of comparison. But bear in mind that we're dealing with a common issue, politics. In West Africa, pretty much there's so many things that are common between the two countries in terms of the characteristics of the population. Nigeria is a wealthy nation, but it's by and large a very poor. Majority of Nigerians live in poverty. The same thing in Liberia. Majority of Liberia is a wealthy nation, but majority of our citizens live in poverty. So the voters, by that standard, they are largely poor. They have that in common. Okay, I mean, they struggle to get that daily bread. I mean, we can take even just that one single issue to say the voters in both countries are united to a large extent in poverty. They are poor. Okay, so now if you just take that single factor, poverty also has a lot to do with how people behave and sometimes how they make decisions as well. Some poor people mostly make decisions just for the day, what keeps them living, as opposed to what will keep them live 25 years from now. That is a common thing that is also common to poor people, poor society. That's why in many African countries, sometimes you wonder why they elect people who are actually dangerous to their own future, because they're making just survival decision for the day, for the moment. Someone who comes and say, I will put your kids in school. I'm going to give them this for that moment. I'm giving it back a rise, or I'm building a bridge for you, or I'll build school in this community. So they make that decision. That's how poor people make decisions, because they're looking at something they've not seen before, and someone is doing it, and so let's just reward him with our life. Because if you vote for someone, you are actually giving your life to that person. That person controls how you live for the next 6 years by the kinds of decisions and actions engaging when they have power. Okay, so that's it. Let me just quickly talk also on the thing, the whole thing about which presidential candidate or aspirant in Liberia might represent Atiku or Obi or Tinubu. The whole thing. If I just Google Tinubu profile, he has a checkered record. This guy was convicted of narcotic trafficking in the state of Chicago. In fact, he forfeiture for more than $460,000. I just put that document in our chat room. Okay, so if you look at it, for me, I believe in that adage that people don't easily change their past. If this guy is the guy who has been a dealer into crime and what have you, I think he's closer to we are in characteristics. So he might rather deal with we are than dealing with the people in the opposition who have clean record or who at least their supporters believe that they're going to change, they're going to run government differently. So Tino may be comfortable. We are. That's just my conjecture on this, based on his record. That I just Google and look at it. Okay. So and if you look at, I didn't know the information Dennis just posted about Obi and Atiku running in the last election. Yeah. If since this is in fact true, that might also play in the role. Probably why voters might say, look, why two of them saw it fit to work together the last time, now they are divided. I probably don't even need to go. They're going to devour what I don't need to go. It's possible. It's possible that some people could think that the fact that they're going that way, it could just discourage voters to say, hey, because when they were together, they had one group of supporters. Now the supporters need to split. Do we go Obi or do we go Atiku? I think I might just send some educated voters and say, you know what, if you look at the numbers, it may not no need to waste my time. It probably contributed to the voter turnout, the low turnout.
And where is Gonglo?
I think Gonglo is very. I think in my mind.
So let me give it to you this way. Do we say Atiku, Bwaka, Obi Cummings, Rabiu, Gonglo, and Tinubu? We are.
Well. Dennis, I would not want to go into all those nomenclature, right? But from what as far as I know, in the opposition, the only person in the opposition that I know he's well resourced is Alexander Cummings. But I don't think the problem that affect Congo in terms of resource, I don't think Bwaka is also far from that. I mean, we talk to people inside or in both camps, so I don't think he's far from that. So, but what I would say, Gonglo has actually the message. The things that are the height of voter like today.
Rich, just like
Gonglo is not even Gonglo is not running campaign as a Nima candidate. He's running campaign. He's running and talking about the issues that have pain Liberia under development. That's what he's talking about. He doesn't even see himself as such. Yes, that's his birth or place. That's his origin. That's his country. That's good for him. But he's talking about the core issue. What are the core issues? Dennis, if we go back on few discussion we had here, Ahmed, Mohammed, Card, and I think we all agree that corruption was number one issue in 2023. Go back and watch that clip. I watched it recently. We all agree. Who is talking and who is giving the prescription on how to stem out corruption? It's Gonglo. All the other candidates, including the incumbent is a definition of what public corruption is. He's not talking about that. And of course, Gonglo is talking about even holding past government officials accountable for the wealth they accumulated. That might run to even some of those who accumulated wealth in a very suspecting way under the Unity Party. So
thank you.
There might be people uncomfortable with him that, hey, this guy wants to shake the boat for everybody. You know, I mean, he's talking about fundamental issues, and I think that is going to serve him well, because under we are, the country will continue to go down, and the people will be looking for, hey, who can hold these people accountable? With all these things are happening, no one in the opposition is saying, I will prosecute Weah and his gangs when I'm elected. They don't have the spine to say that. Gongle is the only one saying that. Let's face the fact.
Thank you. I'll let Alfred conclude on this. So other parallels we will look at is voters turnout. This whole idea, what would it be for Liberia? Also, there were no within year of violence. Also, we didn't. It was kind of the opposition. They challenging the result already. They were saying. So based on those other factors, do we see the same thing? And we just completed a census. Now we have this huge group of people that did not vote at all. Do we expect to see the same thing in Liberia, Alfred?
No, I don't think you. I do not think Liberia would mirror Nigeria in that sense when it comes to voter turnout, because there is a level of enthusiasm when it comes to people who want to vote in Liberia as compared to Nigeria. Because, like somebody said, the Nigerian society is structured in a way where there is this level of resignation people have that no matter what it is, things will remain the same. And the dynamic at play in the Nigerian election, even though it's similar to what happened in Liberia, but the level of poverty being experienced by Liberians and the anger in Liberia will make voter turnout higher than what it is in Liberia compared to population now, because whether we like it or not, whatever we do, our voter turnout will not be as the same as Nigeria when it comes to total population standing. But yes, I don't think it's going to be the same as Nigeria. I think we have a higher turnout in Liberia. And in terms of violence, if the election in Nigeria did not produce the level of violence that we expect from them, given the fact that these are brave individuals, these are people who have experienced life in ways that Liberians have not experienced and who are committed to protest, I don't think it's going to be the same like that, like Liberia. I don't think so. But just to go back to the comparison with Cummings, Gonglo, and George Weah, again, even though we don't want to compare the two, there are similarities between what's happening in Nigeria and what is expected to happen in Liberia. And I firmly believe that outside of any serious correlation between amongst the opposition members, I don't see how they can win the election in second round. It's just difficult for me to see an opposition going to second round and winning the election. And the fact that these two guys were initially together and decided to split is exactly the same thing what happened in Liberia with the CPP. They were together in 2020 that saw them win some good positions, like including the most high profile, which was Darius DeLong winning in Moserado County. George, we has a stronghold. This splitting is exactly what happened in Nigeria. And once you split and your votes are split, that's a problem. The only difference here is in Nigeria, they don't have to do 50+1. In Liberia, you have to do 50+1. So the opposition may have a second shot at this in the second round, but there is no guarantee that after the first round, they're going to have some sort of enthusiasm to even come together to commit like the way they're supposed to commit in the second round for an opposition victory.
Thank you. Dr. Duke, you want to say something? You can unmute it.
I think we seem to also overlook the fact that in the sub-region, the current Ghanaian president beat the incumbent. Buhari beat the incumbent. In Sierra Leone, the opposition beat the governing party. In Benin, the outsider, the businessmen beat the incumbent, the ruling party's candidate. So it does happen. I'm just wanted to throw that out. I mean, Buhari beat, good luck, Jonathan. He was in power. He had all the jets and all the money. In Benin, Yaya had his hand-picked candidate who had millions of dollars. But the cotton grower, Patrick Talon, came and boom. Sierra Leone, the same thing. And even in Senegal, Macky Sall beat the incumbent. So we shouldn't say it's not, it's difficult, but it can be done.
Thank you.
It will happen.
I know you're moving. Can I add to what Dr. Dewey is saying? I think we should also look at the wave, the trend that was trending in the region that time, because that's like 6 or 7 years ago issue he's talking about. So at that time, that was a trend in West Africa. Or opposition was beating the incumbents. Think of the Arab Spring. It
That's
started
the
in one Arab country and just the feeling just spread over. So it started, it just spread in Ghana. The current president, he defeated the opposition and retained power.
And now we're seeing things going back to where incumbents are winning vis-a-vis Nigeria. You know, the ruling party,
That
the
was
guy.
7 years ago. Let's face it. That's a fact.
Yeah, so the guy who just won in Nigeria is part of the ruling party. So things have coming to probably settle down something. Whatever the case is, I think 2023 in Liberia is going to be an interesting election. Let's just put it that way.
Carl, you often say somebody else is kind of, is the puppeteer trying to move things around. Really, we are not, these things are not coming from us, if I'm quoting you directly or correctly. That all these elections we see is just, I don't want to call it facade, but it's not, they are not real. Somebody is actually pushing this button somewhere. Someone whose interest is they don't want to see a smart, energetic, someone who's going to move Africa forward, especially for a populous nation like Nigeria. Would that same thing hold true for Liberia?
I mean, the worst thing that could ever happen to the G8, to the current globe holders, the worst thing that could ever happen to the current globe holders is to have a man like Arthur Barkley or Thomas Sankara or, Dedan Kamati or any of these type of people to become president of a populated nation like Nigeria. That would be the greatest nightmare for the G8, for the globe holders, and it would be the greatest blessing for the continent of Africa. Even if democracy is not a lie, even if people are actually electing the people that they're electing, putting the power to choose your leadership in people that are kept systematically impoverished, poorly educated, and ignorant is dangerous. It's also extremely dangerous when those who are presented as the options are always, the viable options always seem to be so limited. If you look at the last few elections over the last decade, the options that people are given, when I say options, I mean viable options. The people who always seem to be the front runners. It's always the same old 6 and 7. It's never really a true ideological difference between these people. It really is always just, I can do this more competently than this other person. I will serve the West more competently than my opponent. Sometimes mixed up with a little, ethnic, just little stuff like that, or they'll throw some religious stuff in there here and there, ethnic things. But at the crux of it, I mean, if you look at Gambia, you look at all these. There's never really. I mean, look at what happened in Guinea recently. There's never the vision having brilliant minds who are actually able to do something that are ever presented to the masses as options. Whenever someone has the ability to do something, they're never a viable option for the masses. There's some message to the masses that, no, this person doesn't have enough money, this person can't make it. You only can choose between these people. And that happens repeatedly throughout African countries. And at the end of the day, a lot of times it doesn't really matter who wins because the outcome is going to be the same, except for maybe the handful of people around the individual who will be able to eat some of the crumbs of corruption. But the outcome for the greater masses of these people living in these African countries is that they will never benefit directly from their own resources. The outcome is always the Western world, now becoming Asia as well, Asia's joining them, will benefit from the resources of these African countries more than they will. We're sitting in America. We are benefiting more from African resources living in America than we do when we go back to our countries of origin. We pick up cell phones. We're benefiting from African resources. So it doesn't really matter because the options are so narrow. The viable options are so narrow. Here we're talking about someone like Tiawan Gongo, and the first thing that pops out of everyone's mouth or out of, oh, he's not going anywhere. Yeah, he doesn't have enough money. Where is this message coming from? I'm sure out of that 200 plus million individuals in Nigeria, there's at least 50,000 people better than all of the candidates that put their hand up and that were supposedly viable options. There's at least 50,000 Nigerians that are better than them and more capable of correcting Nigeria's divisions and moving Nigeria into a world leader as it should be, with that population, with their human resource capacity. But it benefits the rest of the world to not only suck the mineral resources out of Nigeria and the oil and everything else, but it also benefits the world to suck the intellectual resources out of Nigeria. So the brain drain, the natural resource drain, only exists in a situation of poor leadership and dysfunction. If that is corrected, for Nigeria to increase, the Western world will decrease. So it's not in their interest for Nigeria to be functional. It's not in their interest for Liberia to be functional. So once our countries start to function correctly, it becomes a problem. Someone else is going to lose. For us to benefit from our own resources, someone else is going to lose our resources, the benefits of our resources. So for us to think in our right minds that the people who are currently benefiting from our resources want us to benefit and they not is absurd. And until we start hearing our political candidates talking like this, you will know that those political candidates are not really there for the citizens. Until these political politicians start saying things like, you know what? It's time that our resources educate and feed and elevate our own children. Not the children sitting down in Switzerland and France and all these other places. We don't hear politicians talking like that anymore because that's not the goal. The goal is just to get there and continue the status quo.
Thank you.
The same thing with Liberian politicians. I heard not one Liberian politician condemn the fact that others are benefiting from our resources. While corruption is an issue, the greater issue is the reason the corruption is sustained and supported, because corruption doesn't happen in a vacuum, is because that corruption, that dysfunction benefits someone else. When you want to know who the puppeteer is, you look at who's benefiting.
Thank you. Let Mr. Salih have the last word on this one. Mr. Salih, call strike a point here that sometimes, and you said it, that like they are voters, I mean, they are candidates, right? Sometimes in Africa, Liberia not being exempt, we have just bad candidates to choose from. But don't tell me they are not good people in the country. You can tell me, and Carl said it, that of all the candidates that were running, you could have 1 million more qualified people, but these people don't have a chance. Today, as qualified and competent as I am, if I'm telling anybody I'm going to run, they will laugh, right?
Yeah, no, I think Cole adds some strong points there, but I think you're conflicting campaign politics of, ideological politics. I mean, who presents the candidates to the people, right? Anywhere in the world, elections, resources matter. And it behooves the candidate to cultivate the resources. Nobody is saying, look, Councillor Gonglo is not qualified, can make great president. He has the message. I just outlined his history and his messaging. And but the truth of the matter is, you have to garner large enough following to make you that viable candidate. It's not the West who's presenting Councillor Gonglo to us or George Weah to us or this person to us. Of course, there are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes once you have access to power, and the way you're governing and things like that. But campaign politics, when it comes down to it, in a lot of places, it can be organic. People kind of rise through the system. A lot of the young people in Liberia, we're not
have we had any of those surprises anyway? Someone come. Have we had any surprises? Have someone come from the back and?
Oh yeah. I mean, someone can come from the back, but again, it takes resources. Somebody spots this person and says, "Look, this candidate, has promise. This candidate has the right message. They're hitting the right tunes. Let's put resources behind it." You have to go through the length and breadth of Liberia. You have to reach the voters. You have to craft a message that every voter in the country can resonate with every voter. They can rally around it and gravitate towards you to say, look, this candidate is the best alternative in these elections. I'm excited, can present himself and has beautiful message and starts to talk nice. But if he has, I can't travel to Grand Basso, to River G, to River Says, and I can't put the proper team together. At the end of the day, these people, you have to pay some people. You have to, even if they're volunteering, you have to facilitate movement. You have to, if you're not really doing that, and it's not showing yet, it's difficult to cultivate these viable candidates. Then who can be successful, because a successful campaign. Political campaign is the one who actually wins the election. So look, there's a saying that voters reward fighters in the campaign, and that fighting, they have to see it. It's real. It's not just something that somebody says there's this candidate and how come you're not going behind that. And I think as we have to put some of the onus on Africans and African leaders, not always the West. This mentality. How do we break away from that? How do we break away from that? We can't keep blaming these people. Of course, they've wrecked our continent, and the legacy is massive. We continue to suffer that. But at what point will African youth, African leaders, African intellectuals stand up and say, look, enough is enough. We elect our own people. We hold them accountable. We're not going to be corrupt. We will govern really for our people. That is where the crux of the matter lies, right? People get there, they engage in rent seeking. They engage in rewarding their friends, patronage, and things like that. Corruption is an institution in our region. So there's no way you can engage in an intellectual conversation without someone saying you don't understand what you're talking about. Because the real issue is there are bigger hands behind all of this. Is the West and these white people in Brussels, in London, in Washington, in Paris. They are the ones who are running this show.
Of course. I mean, to deny this is absurd.
I'm not denying that.
To deny this is absurd. I mean, they say it themselves. Like, I don't understand what this denial is.
If I may just finish.
Let him finish.
Please. No one is, I just stated it here, look. We read a history. We understand what happened, what continues to happen about Africa and Black people all over the world, particularly the African continent. We know the history. We've read that. We've been there. And we know what's happening right now. You look at the former Francophone countries, well, the former colonies of France, these countries, some of the economic arrangements still to today. We know that. I've spoken about this like in different places. But the question is, how do we hold ourselves accountable? Because the point Dennis was that, who presents the candidate? It's not the people who come to say, Dennis Jar, you be the one to run for superintendent in your county. It has to be
all right, we got to move to our next call.
Let me just respond to him really quickly, if you don't mind.
Right.
Think really quick. So, denying and pretending that something isn't happening doesn't solve the problem. You solve problems by studying them and understanding them. And nobody is blaming anyone but African leaders. That's part of the problem. They blame the symptoms and not going to the source, the crux of the problem. So saying we can't keep blaming, I mean, there's like we're programmed to automatically defend the West, and try to dismiss the obvious.
That's disrespectful.
And so what I'm saying is,
I disagree.
What I'm saying is, you cannot solve a problem if you do not understand it. and sitting here pretending
I didn't say
that
that.
all
I
things
didn't-
are
you're
equal. I
mischaracterizing
am speaking
my
in
point.
general. I'm not mischaracterizing. You just told me that I'm generalizing, and no, these are things that are documented. There
I
is
acknowledge the
overwhelming
history.
evidence
I
supporting
acknowledge
it.
it's documented.
So
I
pretending that it's not happening.
Hold on now. We got to move.
I let him talk, so let me get my point out, because
Right.
I'm not going to stop talking, argument. We'll just go back and forth. You got your point out. I'm going to get mine out. The bottom line is this. The bottom line is this.
So that's
Until
the
we
second time. So
understand
we'll give him
and
30 more
diagnose
seconds to
the
get his point out.
problem. Sorry, Dennis, you were saying something?
No, I said you were talking for the second time, so that would behoove me to give him another time. Then we keep going back and forth.
No, I was
We
just,
wanna move.
yeah, because he tried to misrepresent what I said.
And
And
too
the
now saying
typical
that
flow of the
everything
show
was
is when
reacting
someone
to
does
your
that, you come in
misrepresentation
and
of what I
clarify.
said.
right.
The bottom line is we have to tell the truth to our people about what's going on, and we have to ourselves understand it first. You
Thank
cannot
you.
solve problems that you pretend are not there.
And to suggest that we
Thank
don't
you.
understand it or we're pretending, I think that is condescending. It's disrespectful. I acknowledge the history.
My
Acknowledge
opinions
what
are
has
not
been-
Hold on, Carl.
Okay, if you feel
Let me get it out
disrespected,
there
that's
so
your
we can move
own
on.
disposition.
How do we?
I have a
how do
right
we
to
break
express
from
myself
that?
without
That is
being
my
emotional.
argument.
None of this is a
Hold on, Carl. Hold on, Carl. We got to move to the next. We got to move to the next.
Yeah, but they need to
something?
toughen up a little bit. Every little thing people say gets them in their feelings. It's difficult having a conversation with such emotional
himself, so it's
people.
not
Yeah,
getting
you also
It's
express
difficult.
emotion, Cole. You can't.
Stop getting in your feelings. We're having a conversation. Don't start
Dennis,
talking about respect and
Dennis,
disrespect.
to this.
You know, we all deserve respect.
Peace.
Let's
We
go
all
to a
deserve
short break.
respect.
We will
It's
be
not.
right
It's
back.
not. It's not.
If you happy with the way things are, then go and register to vote. If you're not happy with the way things are, then you got to register to vote. If you happy with the way things are, then go and register to vote. If you're not happy with the way things are, you better register to vote.
Right, that was the legendary Mianta formula. Say, if you're happy with the way things are, go and vote. If you are not happy, go and vote. Don't just sit there, do something. Registration, voter registration start very soon. We don't want to be like Nigeria, right? Where over 60% of registered voters did not go to the polls and to vote. Well, if you're just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday, and we are tough. It's getting tough and even tougher. Today, we're going to be looking at the investigation in the alleged murder and assassination attempt at the home of former Chief Justice Gloria Musu Scott. Right? These things happen, and there have been opposition statements, there have been teleconferences, investigations, persons of special interest. There have been some allegations from the former TRC Commissioner, Councillor Jerome Verdier. And all these things have happened. I want to start with our law enforcement officer here to give me the feed of what's going on for those of us who are not in the profession. Now we had a video where Councillor Johnson is the lawyer of the mayor. He's being called just for questioning. Now he has a lawyer as if he's being and all these things happening. Mr. Johnson, or in this case, I say Sergeant Johnson. Sergeant, you follow the investigation. You see how things are going. For those, give us a feel of how things are now. What has happened? Is the police proceeding the right way? Or who's supposed to be part of all this investigation? Just give me an overview of what you see in this ongoing investigation, or even if investigation is actually going on in the first place. I hope it is.
So I would do this by putting myself in this situation and telling you exactly what I would have done if I were in charge of this investigation. So, upon receiving the call for service that a residential burglary happened that turned into a murder, when I get on scene, the first thing I'm going to do is secure that scene. That means that entire house is going to be under police control. Anybody in that house will be transported to various depot stations for interviews. I will protect that entire scene, expand my crime scene to ensure that nobody enters the house. Once I have these people at the station for interview, I will start conducting securing evidence, pictures, taking pictures, murder weapon if there, and all that, and speaking to these witnesses who were there. Some of them were victims also, because like the counselor Gloria Mususkat, her house was broken into, so she's both a victim and a witness. And there's other individuals, the other female that were in the house, some of them Miss Wisner, Miss Johnson, and Miss Newton. All these people will be taken to the station for interview. Based on the interview, based on the information they provide, then I will go from there and see if I have other actions to take in terms of search warrants, in terms of where to look in the house for weapons and all that. And the body of the female will be taken to the coroner's office for photographing and processing and all that. After I'm done with all that, I would then, based on what I found, then direct my investigation on where I'm going. Because according to the story, Councilor Gloria Mususkat said she came face to face with the suspect, the individual who did the stabbing. She came face to face with that individual, and she had pepper spray. When she sprayed the person in their face, that's when the person ran. So when she sprayed the person in their face and it ran, I'm assuming that the person did not have on a mask. I will also find out how did the person gain access to the house, because there is this theory out there that there is no indication of forced entry. So if there is no indication of forced entry, that means the individual was granted access to the house at some point, or he or she gained access to the house in an illegal way, but without using force. So if that's the case, I will find out how to gain access to the house. Were they allowed in the house by a family member? Is this a domestic incident? Because there are so many possibilities. I will also look at Councilor Scott's cases that she's handling, because that could be another source of information. What kind of cases she has? Are these cases of high-profile nature? Like she's currently the lawyer for Unity Party in the Musa Bedete, I think CPP in the Musa Bedete incident. So I will try to look at that side of it. I will also look at cases that we would normally not look at in terms of public relevance, but that the individuals involved in those cases see those cases as life-threatening to them, that the outcome of those cases could be life-changing in a negative way. I will look at those cases. And then I will look at all pool of potential suspects and see if I can have a graphic designer, whoever it is, or portrait artist or something like that, draw the picture of the suspect and go from there. But outside of that, there's not much you can do. But the main thing I will focus on, though, is to interview these people. Make sure that I get them in a room to interview them while their memories are fresh, to get as much information as possible, because the more time goes, the less likely it becomes for you to catch a suspect. Because as the day goes on, this suspect, whomever it is, they are trying to cover their tracks. So in the process of covering their tracks, if more time goes by, I won't be able to get this person. And additionally, if the scene is not processed in time in an appropriate way, it could affect prosecution. So this is how I'm going to approach it. However, LMP at this point, so far so good, nobody has said anything about murder weapon, whether the murder weapon has been recovered, whether it was even on scene. From all indication, the house was not secure. The house is a crime scene. Nobody should have been in that house once LMP got on scene. That entire house should have been under the control of LMP, and there's a need for a search warrant to go further, or you can get consent search from Councilor Gloria Mususkat for you to go through the house to see if you can find a murder weapon or things like that. But nobody should have been in that house. The fact that somebody was in that house, it contaminated the scene, and it creates problems for the prosecutorial process, because it is not just apprehending this person, if possible. It is also the fact that the person has to be prosecuted, and the evidence obtained with be challenged by this person's lawyer, and you want to have a case where your evidence you have is so airtight that when there's a challenge put forward the evidence, it cannot be excluded. So based on that, that's what I would do. But LMP has not done most of these things. And LMP, what LMP has done is completed a disservice to the case and Councilor Musu's case and the deceased. They have focused on the political aspect of the case as opposed to allowing themselves to be moved by the information they receive on scene. You cannot be functioning based on somebody telling this person did it, this person did that. They claim that this person, what's his name, Valley did X, Y, Z. There is no supporting evidence to that claim. So LMP shouldn't have in any way, shape, or form entertained that.
But that's what I was coming to, Mr. Johnson. The allegations on the social media from Councilor Gloria, should the LMP be acting on it?
No. And here is why. So Councilor Vredia he said so many things on multiple channels. As a matter of fact, when I was on OKFM yesterday, there was a message he sent to the host, Julius J, and the host read it on air. And he even implicated President Weah in the death of Quincy B, the musician that died March 3rd, 2017 in a motor vehicle accident. So if you can list that, if he can say that, that means there is nothing about this man that is saying that he's presenting that have evidence. He has yet to present any evidence to support his claims. So I'm not going to go after Jefferson Koji or Valley based on what what's his name, Councilor Vredia is saying, because why he's saying all that, he has yet to present anything substantive that supports it. So okay, you're saying it's Valley. Did you speak to anybody on that scene who said it was valid? Did you speak to Councilor Mususka who said the individual was valid teller? Do you have any evidence to suggest that you saw the vehicle on scene that said it was the blue pickup? Was valid? Does valid have any motive, any reason whatsoever to attack Councilor Gloria Mususka? Does Jefferson Koji have any motive to do that? Even though motive, and I don't want to get too academic here, motive is not an element of the crime, but motive can direct the investigation. So with motive, you'll be able to have a clear understanding on how to go about the investigation. So none of these things he said points and says anything as far as evidence is concerned for LMP to say, oh, Valley is a person of interest. Now, the interview Valley provided, the press conference Valley was involved in, his entire demeanor was not convincing. But in as much as it was not convincing, there is nothing about that interview that tells me that he was involved in the incident at Councilor Gloria Mususka's house. So LMP going after Valley or trying to call Jefferson Koji in for interview, it was just LMP succumbing to political pressure as opposed to allowing themselves to be guided by the evidence and whatever the investigation finds out.
Thank you. Dr. Duke, you've seen many of these things. What's different about this case?
Well, the difference, I think, as Johnson just said, is the politicization of the whole process. That the police that are supposed to be investigating is just going from press release to press release, calling press conferences and putting on a big show as if they have to protect somebody or clear someone from the crime. I don't see the professionalism. I don't see, people sitting there and say, okay, let's go to, like today, I think the front page to Africa has a story coming up tomorrow saying that the police is threatening to take actions against Gloria Scott if she doesn't come up to talk to them. I said, but no, her house is a crime scene. You go to her, you don't sit at a police station and say, come to us and talk to us. That's what I did with Mayor Koji. Why do you want a mayor to come to the police station in the glare of cameras to come and respond to what is simply somebody saying something on social media? So like I say, oh yeah, that guy killed my uncle 20 years ago. You're going to go after him? You're going to go call him and say, oh, he said it on the radio, so we have to clear you or we have to talk to you to show that we are following the legal process. But, there are so many things they're doing wrong, but that's because not the judiciary, but the police, the security system has been politicized. Everybody is trying to cover themselves up. And this goes beyond just the police. I'm talking about, for example, the Minister of Defense on the Armed Forces Day went and said, we have a red line. If anybody crosses that line, I know the young man. I know him when he went to training. The defense minister, is he advising his own president, or is he talking about the political class? He cannot threaten his boss, so he's indirectly threatening the opposition. So this whole thing comes in, I create this atmosphere of fear, of insecurity. You have
and let me come in, Dennis, just quickly to follow on what Dr. Dukley said. You can't wait for your victim or your witnesses to come to you. When I get on the scene of an incident, so if I get on the scene of a shooting, I used to be a detective before making sergeant. I investigated everything up to attempted murder. When it turns into murder, it becomes the responsibility of the homicide detective. But when I get on the scene of a shooting and I have witnesses, or I have a victim who did not get shot, and maybe it's a non-contact shooting, he was shot at, but the bullet did not hit him or her. What I would do is very simple. I would have multiple detectives on scene. I would have, if the victim is at a hospital, I will have one of my detectives go to the hospital to interview the victim at the hospital. If I have witnesses to transport, I will have patrol units make sure those witnesses and or whoever victim that is okay to be transported to the station for interview. I'm not going to say that victim to transport themselves. Now, in the event that that victim has a vehicle and I don't want to be responsible for the vehicle, I can tell that victim, follow this police cruiser to the station. But I'm not going to leave that victim at the house or on scene and hope that that victim comes later to be interviewed. Because the more time you waste, the less likely you are to find the criminal or the person who they committed or whomever that committed the crime. So you have to transport your victim. The idea that LMP has to wait 4 or 5 days for Councilor Scott to show up for interview is concerning. But again, on the flip side, when you have a situation where people have politicized everything, then you see why it is what it is. Because, take for example, one of the difficulties I believe Councilor Scott had in coming to the station is because what Jerome Verdier said. I strongly believe that her refusal is because she does not want to embarrass Jerome Verdier. I honestly, from my professional experience, I do not think there is anything that suggests or anything that suggests that Taylor was on that scene. And I'm quite sure Councilor Scott knows that. So to avoid the embarrassment, that's why she's playing this slow role. Again, because things have been politicized, it's affecting the investigation in ways that creates problems for the public trust in LMP's ability to provide public safety. And that's a problem, especially when we're coming to elections this year.
Thank you. One of my favorite characters in this whole anything legal in Liberia is this guy.
Consequences of a failure to cooperate with criminal investigation, especially when the crime was committed in your house. Our sympathy is to the family, and we regret this incident. This barbaric act is condemned in the strongest term. In addition to that, everybody needs to cooperate with the Liberian National Police.
Yes, Councilor Arthur Johnson, who's now the lawyer of Mayor Jefferson Koji. Mr. Salif, what do you make of this case? I mean, it's becoming like theater now.
It's becoming like what?
Sorry. I said it's a theater now.
Oh, I see.
And even the different scenes, right? You're not a law enforcement, but you got some law there. So tell me what's going on here. What is it that is it the politics of it? Are we really after the criminals in this case? What's going on? What's your take?
Well, I mean, you got to put the case in a broader context of the lack of culture of rule of law and training and sophistication of the law enforcement agency. We've seen the LNP, in many other instances, in homicide situations where they just announce an investigation, we haven't seen the conclusions or reports. They'll say they brought somebody from a foreign person to conduct forensic investigation. We don't see outcomes of these investigations really satisfactorily to the family. Sometimes prosecution doesn't happen, like the case doesn't follow through, because every case, the law enforcement expert is here. I'm not speaking to that. That's not my area of knowledge. But a case has a life cycle, and that along which it travels, right? So we don't see that. We see a police that's been politicized. We see political, like, okay, Councilor Verde is speaking now, but the one thing I want to be careful with what Mr. Johnson is trying to suggest. I don't know the motive of why the former Chief Justice doesn't want to go to the police to answer questions. She may still be very traumatized. I mean, we got to think about the magnitude of this, right? She lost a child. People attacked her. She could have lost her life. She considers this as an assassination attempt. And I watched one interview where she kept asking, why me? What happened? Why? Like, so she's really traumatized by this situation. And she knows the police. She knows the context. She knows Liberia. That sometimes the police will come, they will question you. They might even try to implicate you, right? And there's no result, really, at the end of the day. And people are victimized and nothing happens. That's the sad story that we're dealing with here. On top of that, now you have Councilor Fredia, who is a prominent president, former chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, about the collected evidence, investigated, although these new cases that he's been accusing people about weren't really part of that TRC work. But he claims that he has people, that his organization has inside informants in the government, top places that are providing information, and that he has evidence. It's just that he's not going to disclose that to the media or on social media, right? But they're compiling a report based on the interview I listened to when Fredia spoke, that at the right time they'll release this. I mean, that doesn't help anybody, right? It's conjectural. It's just something he's throwing out there. He's a lawyer. He shouldn't be doing that, because then you're implicating so many different people. You're even it's impacting the case. Now it's been very politicized. The mayor's been dragged to the police station to answer questions. I was asking myself, somebody says he did something, like Mr. Johnson is saying, no evidence is led to him, at least not that we know in the public. You say, well, your name was called. Someone said Dennis Jai, and so Dennis come and answer question. On what basis? I was just asking myself about these things. So to answer your question, just from afar, from my vantage point, just reading and seeing what's in the media out there, I think just the broader context is impacting this, just because our police, we haven't really seen them demonstrate expertise and independence. Where they investigated, and this investigation led to prosecution, just really plain law enforcement, prosecutorial work, and conclusion, just rule of law, defending and protecting people. That's really where I think the vulnerability is, as far as I can see.
Mr. Gongwe, a lot of things have been happening since this incident, right? We saw the Valley interview where the two other city police, they were kind of preventing him from answering some questions. And they are not lawyers. I say, but why put this man in this situation if you don't want him to talk? And now there's questions about the other police officer having a gun. The IG will come and say, we took the gun from him this time. In fact, the other police officer would say, or city police, Valley had this gun 1994. And this man was fighting for Ulembo. Was he rehabilitated? He doesn't look, I don't want to read too much into his demeanor, but he doesn't look very sound, in his right mind. Like, this man needs help. And how do we get these kind of people into knee and guns? If you want to rehabilitate former fighters, maybe you give them, construction jobs or things that they are far from those kind of areas. you were in Liberia, you kind of somehow involved in this whole demobilization, rehabilitation, or at least saying people, I mean, what are we doing here with people? And you also said something that struck me when I was looking at the guy is Liberia may become like Haiti, or Liberia is Haiti, where these former fighters, as we learn, many of the top dogs in the country are using them for their own protection. And so if these guys no longer have a job, only God know what they're going to be doing next. What's your reading on this implication of Valley Teller? Now I think the whole of the other people that are coming to defend him, they say Mandingo, people from Kwanum Boni, the Teller family, as if they even know him. What's going on here, Mr. Bungalow?
But Dennis, that's precisely what we said last week. That Liberia is actually gradually moving towards being Haiti. In 2023, it's actually a moment to actually change that direction. Depending on who we elect. Because if we elect people, someone who is George we are like, then you've not helped the country anyway. You just change the color. That's all. The content remains the same. So when I look at Valley Teller, I feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
Okay. Second, one thing I ran into my mind, okay, probably he was not prepared for this public spectacle, because people who are wicked sometimes they don't let spotlight on them. Okay. I mean, I've read so many history of him, but it speaks to the larger question of what, and sometimes I don't want people to think that maybe I'm being critical of President Salim, whom I work with sometimes. But it speaks to the larger question of what sometimes I personally feel that she actually left the country. She didn't do good for Liberia in many respects. Because if they've done something on the TRC recommendation, we will not have the likes of Valley Teller. It's so many in our government parastatals exercising, using authority to probably allegedly do something bad. This guy say he sleeps at the charge of quarter in City. I live in Satan before. I know what Monrovia City Police do every night to residents around there. They have basically, because they know the law, they know the city ordinance. At no time, the Monrovia City has given city ordinance to residents in Monrovia, even to say each house should pay for it, to even read what the city ordinance is. But the city police use the city ordinance to arrest people. I live in city. I know they will come even Sunday morning and say, oh, you got this thing around your house. It's against the city ordinance. They drag you to city hall and take money from you if you don't want to go to jail. I experienced it. I lived in Satan for years when I was going to the university. So for such a man to, when he talked about living in a church or quarter, I started remembering myself. I said, these are the guys who harass people every Sunday and Saturday morning. Okay, so if such a person is he's using legal means, he's using the authority of state to discharge duty. It's very sad. Okay, I would say it's very sad. So if you look at a larger question, what are we going to do? Are we going to how do we deal with people like this? A few weeks ago, I was talking to somebody from CDC in Nimba, and this guy was saying to me that he was shocked. He was in a meeting at another former MPF General House where he had about 45 MPF ex-general gathered together, and President Taylor was speaking to them, giving them instruction on what they should do in 2023, what action they should take. This guy was telling me, I'm like, okay, all right. This is kind of getting closer to my narrative. So what are we going to do? Liberia is actually headed towards a danger. And we have to do something. And I think this election gives an opportunity if we can change course. If we don't, Valley Teller is just the tip of the iceberg. There are thousands of them around the country. Like P.O. Lumba would say, like I just heard somebody say, people come from Kuala Lumpur. That's their owner criminal. They will and say, you can't do nothing with our no criminal. He's in fire. He's untouchable. Just like all of us, this guy, yeah, he's a thief, but he's our own thief. He's a good thief for us. They go and steal money from the people, go and build skyscraper in their homes and put few people, children on scholarship. So when somebody want to touch them, the law wants to catch them, there are people demonstrate and say, this man is our own thief. Valley Teller is the alleged criminal of some people from Kwanu Bono. And there are so many scenarios like that. And that's how the country gradually going to be balkanized between ex-soldier and people with money will hire them. They will be the higher guns around the country moving. That's why this is a serious matter. But our leaders and our intellectuals are not putting the emphasis on it.
Thank you. Carl, when I first heard from Councillor Gloria, because there was no evidence, I didn't take that seriously until I watched City Mayor Koji and also the Valley Teller, where the city mayor did not even try to state whether Valley Teller works with the city police or MCC. And then when I saw Valley Teller looking so disoriented, and even at a time, did you have a gun? And people trying to protect him from saying anything. That's the time I came to myself and said, wait a minute, maybe this is something people will look into. Well, what do you make of this? All that is happening, Carl? On mute, please. On mute, Carl.
Okay. So, disclaimer here. First, before I say anything, my condolences to Councillor Gloria Musu Scott and all of those people who loved the deceased and the trauma that is associated with having your home, your residence violated in a violent way. It's a traumatic experience, and then having someone that you love murdered in your home, and you have to live in that home after having such an experience. I can't even imagine what that's like. So before I say anything, my condolences to the family. And then the next thing I would like to say is I haven't been following the story, really. I removed myself from social media, most social media platforms. I don't really know how much of what we're discussing here is fact and how much is just rumors, right? I lived in Liberia, and you would go on Facebook and you would be somewhere, witness something, you go on Facebook and you hear a completely different story and everybody's running with it. So we're great at spinning stories and blowing things out of proportion. So I'm not accusing anyone on this panel. I don't want anyone to get in their feelings. I'm just saying, generally speaking, I like to, speak off of things I know and not speculation, especially with something serious like a murder. I would hope that the Liberian National Police and it would not call the mayor for questioning if they didn't have evidence beyond rumors and gossip. One thing I do know about law enforcement, I don't know a lot, they don't throw all their cards out on the table, and they don't make everything public until their investigation is complete. So there may be a lot of information that we are just speculating on that LNPS has that we don't have. I also know from my time in Liberia and working with government that we have a lot of I won't use the word a lot, we do have some very competent investigators, law enforcement people in Liberia. Everyone in Liberia is not incompetent. Newsflash, we do have competence. Whether those competent individuals are being put at the forefront of this, whether they are the ones conducting the investigation, I don't know. And so me wanting to believe in my people and believe in the situation, even though time and time again that belief gets me disappointed, I would really like to give them the benefit of the doubt. I would really like to believe that all of those well-trained individuals, and you know who you are, and I know you, I hope you're watching, can take, that step forward and get this solved, get this resolved. I hope you're already involved. I hope you're already, doing all of the tracing and everything that is necessary to get this resolved. The violence against women in that country has become normalized. It has become normalized. It is so extreme. A young woman's life in that country is almost worthless. And in this particular case, we're paying attention to it because it was Counselor Scott. She's a former, Supreme Court justice, and all of these things. Now this young woman is important. But if that Ma Keba daughter, we won't be talking about it. And how many other girls were murdered this week and last week in Liberia that we don't even know about, quietly buried in the interior. This is an opportunity for the Liberian National Police to prove the naysayers wrong, to show your competence. This is an opportunity for Liberian National Police to prove to Liberian citizens that they can be trusted. This is an opportunity to prove that you're not all politicized, that you're not all there to praise sing, that some of you swore an oath to office and to duty and you take it seriously. And I know who you are. This is not a political issue beyond the fact that government is supposed to protect citizens from violence and other abuses. Beyond that, this is a situation of duty, your duty and your responsibility to the badge, to your office you hold, to your fellow citizens. Nobody is above the law. I am going to take the idea that you called Mayor Koji in for questioning as a positive. I'm not going to say that that was a political stunt. I want to believe you were following up on a lead. And I want to believe that there's information that the Liberian National Police have, that they're keeping close to their chest, and that this will be resolved. This case will be solved and we'll all be incredibly impressed. And once again, public confidence will be restored in our police system. If that could happen, great. All of that being said, I don't know if Counselor Scott has gone to the police or not gone to the police. Like I said, I'm not privileged to any of that information. I don't know how much of this is rumor, how much is fact. I do know she's a lawyer, a very good lawyer. And I do know that she's competent and intelligent and brilliant. And I do know that if she makes a decision to cooperate or not cooperate, she's doing so within her legal right to do so. And so the speculation that maybe, she's in violation or, not cooperating with police, she understands the law. She knows what her rights are and what they're not. And if at all she's not cooperating, it's probably a trust issue, which is extremely unfortunate. So I'm hoping that's not the case. And that's all I'm going to really say to that. As far as Counselor Vladimir, I can't pronounce his name correctly. I've clashed with that brother on this show too. But but I will say this: I don't think that he's just going to invent things out of thin air. I don't think that he's insane. So when people say things, even if they're colorful or maybe exaggerate a bit, I don't want to believe that this brother is a complete maniac that just makes things up out of thin air. There has to be some basis for what he said.
Thank you. Well, if you're just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday. We are discussing the investigation in the alleged murder and assassination attempt at the home of Councillor Gloria Musu Scott. If you want to be a part of the conversation, please call the number that's on your screen. That's 605-313-6004, code 791403#. Sergeant Johnson, where is this thing going?
So before I answer that question, I have a few things I would like to quickly address. Mr. Salif, I was not trying to imply that Senator Scott is operating from a political perspective as it relates to Jerome Verdi. My point was, because of the way Councilor Verdi has come out to say these things, it has convoluted the whole thing to the point that she herself now, she feels like, why am I coming out? All these things going on, like wherever I come away, there will be some sort of political undertone way. That's the perspective from which I was coming from. Now, we all would like to be hopeful when it comes to Liberia. We all would like to believe that things are being done the right way. But sometimes our rainbow approach towards issues in Liberia have problem being reconciled with the realities on the ground. And what do I mean? LMP is, there is no doubt that you have some very good investigators in LMP. That's a fact. You know, I had the opportunity to see the case folder involving Gifty Lamont and Albert Peters, and I went through that case folder, and the work that was done on that case was very, very impressive. It was very, very impressive, and that's part of the reason why sometimes when I hear people accuse other people of being involved in Gifty Lamont's and Albert Peters' death, and I say to myself, you have no idea what you're talking about, because the work that was done on that case, the people that were involved, these are credible individuals that were involved in that case, and they provided evidence. They proposed that investigation from an objective perspective because they wanted to solve the problem. And whatever finding they came up with, unless somebody else can come up with something much more credible than what I saw, I think whatever conclusion that was reached in that investigation was well within investigative procedure and work. But the one thing is the Moral City Police situation, the involvement. You see, people have this knee-jerk reaction to things in Liberia that is not good. Moral City Police, and this is what happens when you have a society where people don't understand their responsibility and the power they hold in society. Moral City Police had a press conference for an employee who was accused of being involved in a murder. Even if Jefferson Koji was accused, and Value was also an employee of being accused, there is absolutely Jefferson Koji is not the Moral City Police or the Moral City Corporation that has been accused. It is the employees of these entities that have been accused. So there's absolutely no reason why the communication director for Moral City Police should be sitting along with this accused employee, because what happened now is you are mixing things. You are putting a personal issue, making it a government issue. And that should not be the case. You are making people's personal issue to be government issue. Like what Jefferson Koji did the other day, I think they recognized that mistake, and he called Arthur Johnson as his lawyer, because Arthur Johnson is representing the interests of Jefferson Koji. But to have a press conference where Valley was there, the communication director for Moral City Corporation or something was there, and the director of the Moral City Police being there and speaking on behalf of Valley telling was completely wrong. They convoluted the whole thing. They make it a government issue and it's not supposed to be, but that's the reaction people have. Now, even with that Valley's demeanor at that press conference, I still do believe that LMP shouldn't have called him in right away, because when you call somebody in, that means you have something to hold that person by. So when Valley presented himself at that press conference, he availed himself without police involvement. So he essentially waived his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. So whatever he said at that press conference was necessary to be followed up upon. They asked him, where were you at that day, at the night of the murder? He said, I was at work. Okay, you got to follow up on that. When LMP follow up on all those things that, and they feel there's some level of inconsistency and say, oh, this guy is somebody that we have to look deeper into, then they can bring it in. But I firmly doubt, based on the information I have, that LMP even went beyond the press conference as far as inviting volunteers is concerned. I think what they did was that when they saw that press conference and the members of the legislature were pressuring the LMP director in that hearing, they decided, oh, we're going to call voluntarily because of political pressure. That's not how you run investigation, because if you do that, you are creating a problem for yourself. Now, what this whole thing has caused is that it has taken away from the actual investigative work. And what do I mean? When you have somebody already putting out a suspect 10, 15 hours after the murder without any serious evidence, the Liberian public, there's a vacuum that was created. And somebody has to fill that vacuum. Whatever information that is placed in that vacuum, to get it out of there is difficult. Now, if LMP does an excellent work and come up with a suspect completely separate from Valitelli, Because there is a group of people who believe in Mr. Councilor Verde, they will never believe that LMP could come up with a separate suspect. Whatever suspect LMP comes up with, they will say, oh, they're using that as a cover-up. Even though there will always be a section of the society that says that, but because of the revelation that Valiteri was involved, that section of the society has increased significantly. That's one thing. Another thing it does, it takes away from the family's grieving process. You cannot politicize people's tragedy. You cannot do that. And that's what's happening here without any, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Justin, but the way the city police jump in front of this, isn't that more reason to be suspicious that maybe they know something, as a group?
Yeah, but then it's not just the police. I was just watching Mr. Morba, Morba Molu. This is his second press conference. In 3-4 days, he had 2 press conferences on the same issue, defending Jefferson Koji. Why is it the CDC issue?
So I think the reason why this is like this is because Jefferson Koji's name was mentioned by Councilor Verdier as one of the person who's using Valiteri for clandestine activities. And Jefferson Koji, because Jefferson Koji was mentioned, and Valiteri, Councilor Verdier said Valiteri was at Councilor Gloria Mususka's house. And that's why you see people asking Valiteri about what happened to his eye, because Councilor Scott said she's pepper sprayed the person and all that. I think because of that, it brought Koji in. And once these guys have certain people who are being politically attacked, they feel the need to come and defend. I think that's the perspective from which the reaction is coming from. But as an investigator, I do not believe I see anything so far that says these guys were involved in the incident at Councilor Gloria Mususka's house. Now, is it possible they could have been involved? Yes. But I don't see any evidence. I don't see any motive why. I see nothing so far so good that tells me that.
But here's what I see, and we're bringing our colors now. Is you remember the story where they say they were having a feast, and they say time to eat. They say
the ugly animal get water.
Yeah, let the ugly person go get water. And Babu say, I don't want to carry a heavy bucket.
He said, gentlemen, it's my last time getting water.
So I mean, if they are talking about murder, and then the city police, the LMP, the CDC chair, everybody jumping in front of it, do you give him more room for suspicion? But let me bring on the callers now. And guess who our first caller is? That's Mr. Evans Morris. Let's use 1 minute. We have time is fast spent. Evans, welcome to the show.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jai. Hello to your panelists. Good to see you, Mrs. Family, back on the panel tonight. Quickly, just big kudos to Mr. Alfred Johnson. I think he's done a great job, analyzing the case. Quickly, let me just start with the Nigerian situation quickly before we move forward. This should be a clearing call to all the oppositions, parties in Liberia to, fight against this whole electronic, voting. Because that was the biggest thing in Nigeria with this whole BVAS thing that they were doing, where they will upload the voting in live time, where people can see, how the election was going. And then on the day of the election, because before the election, they did a mock run of this whole thing, and they said everything was ready to go, everything was working perfectly fine. Well, you believe that the senatorial election and the representative election all went through fine using the BVAS, except the presidential election. Can you believe that? So if we're trying to do electronic voting in Liberia, these political parties better go in front of it and strongly oppose it, because that could be another point of contention in our election that could bring, violence or some form of disruption in our country. And then quickly to this whole Gloria Mususka case, like Ms. Call said, I want to echo what she said in terms of sending out condolence and denouncing what happened to the former Chief Justice. But Mr. John and some of the learned people on the panel tonight, can you tell us what Gloria Mususka's legacy was as a Chief Justice, or Justice Minister, or Senator? What legislation or policy did she pass or did she fight for? She's the first female Chief Justice in our republic. What does she do for women's rights? For young girls, for rape and other things like that affect women. She herself being one of the women in our country. So if anybody can speak on that, I'll be glad to hear, because I was in Liberia during her time as Chief Justice. I lived under her rule.
What does it have to do with the assassination attempt and murder at her house?
Well, Mr. John, good question. You say you want to be superintendent of Sino. I'm sure you have a reason. There's some things you saw in your county that you want to change, and you desperately want to get there to change certain things. Everybody who wants to be a lawyer or a doctor, they have a reason that they want to become that, be in that profession. So
let's say she did nothing. Does that give anybody the right to go and kill somebody at her house?
Look, Mr. John, it's unfortunate, but she's not the only person that things like this has happened to in Liberia. Other people who are less means, things like this has happened to them. But when we put people like this in our
Evans, I think this is the wrong time to talk about that. What she did.
Yeah. It might seem insensitive, but this is a reflection point. We should look at people, not just her, but other people who are in position of power. What legacy are they leaving? What impact are they leaving? Are we just going to praise them because they held a position, or because they left a lasting impact in our country's history? So we have to ask those tough questions.
I'm sorry.
I don't want people to get sensitive about it.
Thank you. Let me go to Ambrose.
Right.
I don't think that's had any relevance because this is a crime scene. Let's talk about the crime and not what she did as Justice Minister. Ambrose, you're alive. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. How you doing, John? And hi to your panelists. I'm a little bit baffled. I think what happened to the Chief Justice daughter, her stepdaughter, is really bad or it's forgiven. But I'm of the mindset because I've been monitoring and watching all of news channel, and I've been on Facebook to see where her house is located because I've never been in Broadway. I don't know where she lives or whatever, where the house was located. But looking at all of that, I think it's our police got the ball for it because that house was supposed to be a crime scene, and you were supposed to take full charge of that. John, I'll be honest. We can't change Liberia when we put 32 on a pedestal. They are untouchable because right now, from listening to just speaking, any outcome the political way, it would not be accepted. If the police come tomorrow and say, "Oh, they're going to fight, they want Gloria as a suspect," it will be a really, really trouble in Liberia. And she refusing to talk to the police or don't want to give a statement to the police. She wants a justice minister.
Do you know that for a fact that she refused to talk to the police?
That's what the police director said on the oath. If she has spoken with the police, it will be on the news. Okay, if she has spoken with the police will issue or put a statement out last tonight or early month in Liberia. And I'll be honest, if she said she pepper sprayed somebody, if you have everybody going with the mindset because Betty said, coaches and that criminal were involved, everybody wants to believe his story. Because I saw the gentleman is hurting 200 people that was the pepper spray. But if you saw the madam house, or you know what the madam house looking, and the fence, there's no way somebody can leave that premises with nobody seeing me.
Thank you. We expect the police to go on the scene and ask those questions, and not sit at the office and be calling people. But thank you, Ambrose.
No, but John, hold on for a second. It's different with you. You are living in America. We know it's because people is taking advantage of what Liberia. If it was America, it's not a compromise. If you right now in America, if something happens to you, police are going to be negotiating with you first to have a statement from you.
Yeah. So okay. Thank you. So let the police go there. If she refuses to talk, then we'll know. Let Madison Kemu. Go ahead, Madison. One minute. We are almost out of time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to say thank you, panelists. I really enjoy the show. They all bring a lot of information to the discussion tonight. First of all, let me extend my deepest condolences to the counselor, Chief Justice, and all victims in Liberia. I just got maybe two questions to ask the panelists. Do you guys think that former Chief Justice, person of that kind of status in our society, do you guys think that she deserves security? Like police security at all times? And the next thing is that because of the past relationship between the police and the citizens of Liberia, there has been a lot of trust issues. Past cases are gone without no solution. I mean, it's countless. I don't want to mean that, but people wait. For example, There were calls that were placed out to the police to come to the woman rescue. The police dragged their feet until the particular incident went on. So as we speak right now, even if the police try to solve this case, there will still be doubt in the public mind because of what has been happening. The Liberian National Police need real training and the needle. Take people out of that system. Most of them are partisan police. We see on a daily basis. So my whole advice to the police right now is that, especially the police chief, you have to be serious to solve crime. You have to be serious. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next caller here is Darling Warwood. Darling, you're live.
Yeah, John, I will just say a few things quick. One, of all that we have heard and saying, there is no evidence that connect Valley Tele directly to the crime scene. We have not seen any evidence.
Right.
If Mr. Jerome brother is serious about those allegations that he's throwing around, I think he should fly the maneuver to help the LMP with the investigation. But you can't be sitting behind the high walls in America and be throwing wild allegations all over the place. Three, I think the government needs to be vigilant. This is election year. I also want to believe that there are folks from the opposition political parties who are also beyond some of these killings just to blackmail this government. So the joint security needs to be very vigilant. They need to monitor some of these because the opposition
That's very wide.
have a lot of ex-combatants, a lot of former generals. Look at Mr. Elizabeth Cummings' campaign team. We got Dan Mariah. We have this other guy that calls himself, we have retired suffering, Louis Brown. We have Daniel Tier. All those fearful people, they have beyond Elizabeth Cummings. How sure are we that those guys are not behind the killing? Just to blame this government. And also, I know people might not be happy about what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Gloria is also for the opposition political party from UP. How sure are we that people is lagging behind what happened, what went wrong in your house? Come on
now, darling.
My brother, look, you can't write things up.
Yeah, you can't talk to a grieving mother. You kill your own daughter to make political comment. Just stop that.
I agree. That's not her daughter. That's her niece. Nobody else got killed in her house but her niece. Her own children, none of them got hurt but her niece. She too needs to be called for questioning. We have to put all guys on deck. You can't rule out anything.
Thank you.
Lastly, the government will be vigilant. They need to watch out for Dan Mariah, Benedict Ure, all these people. They need to watch out for these people. They need to start security. They need to follow these guys during the night when they are moving because they could be also clandestine activities.
Dennis, I'm gonna ask that you just ask him not to. That's too much. That was too much.
I mean, it's difficult to
so
imagine.
Don't let them use your platform to do that. That's so wrong.
I mean,
I had to sit through that.
In one breath, the man can say people should not accuse without accusation, and in the next breath, he accused without accusation. So,
that was uncalled for.
Let me bring in Tadman. Tadman, you're live.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I want to thank your panelists. I mean, they all brought up that point. But I would agree with our previous caller before the last one. I mean, everywhere in the world there's a problem when it comes to trust regarding citizen rights and the police, even in America here. I mean, in a lot of cities, we don't trust the police. That's a fact. No matter what death training they get, citizens always have problems when police investigate crime. So trust between citizens and the police is something that around the world is a problem. Okay. Now let's get back to Lakra's situation. What happened to the former Chief Justice? It's unfortunate, and my condolences to her, family, and not only her, but other people that were affected, other families that was affected. Even during her time as Justice Minister, there were people who were murdered in our country, and investigation going on.
Let's talk about this one. If people were right, I don't know what I don't want to do here is, I mean, this lady is grieving her daughter. She herself or she was attacked, and people are saying, "Oh, let's check and what did she do when she was justice minister?" I think that's unfair.
Yeah, that's true. But that's what I'm saying. I say my condolences to all, and even those who those other families that have and people lost their loved ones during hard time are justice for everybody. But now, what I want to say here is, you know, a situation like this, if we discussing it, because we have some political bias, so it cloud our judgment. You see, this is a criminal case. We should have an open mind. We have the national police. I mean, Madam Scott should be cooperative. If she's not, I will encourage her to cooperate with the police. And I will agree with Johnson, you know. I mean, if we're discussing this kind of situation here, let us be open-minded. Let us give the police a chance to go through the investigation. Let us not let our political biasness cloud our judgment and take sides.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, this young man lost a life. So
thank you.
Encourage your parents to be open-minded. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 callers left. Please be as brief as possible. Thomas Connor, then Percy, and then we close the line. Go ahead, Thomas.
Thank you, Dennis, and good evening to everyone. I just wanted the security person to be able to respond to this concern that I have. If the LMP, with all of the force that they are using to get people to speak, whether they have some initial lapses. Because if you listen to what is going on, people are going to visit the former Chief Justice, and she's speaking. The people she doesn't want to speak to based on what is in the press and Front Page Africa is reporting is the police. So she has had a lot of interaction and a lot of issues, and she has taken to the police. One of the things she explained recently is that she had gone to the Elections Commission at the time she was serving as a lawyer, I think for Unity Party or Liberty Party. And before she left the compound of the Elections Commission, the license plate on her vehicle was taken out. She took that issue to the police. She even wanted to take another one, and the police asked her not to take another license plate because that is related to some kind of intent of the person who did that. And then she gets attacked at her home twice. And she goes to the police, they go and do a risk analysis. And the outcome of the risk analysis was they advised her, don't worry much, just take 2 private security. And in the course of a week, she almost lost her life. That kind of traumatized person, and people are here putting pressure on her. And then for me, the worrying thing is the way the country has been polarized. And then people get up and go over social media. If I was not her daughter that died, why is it that the other girl died or only children did not die? Can we put ourselves for a moment in the shoe of this woman who spent all her resources to send a little girl to school who was graduating from university to be killed, and people are saying now people want to know what did she do when she was Chief Justice? To be in Minnesota all these years, why you couldn't go and research, or why don't you research? It's crazy that you want to know. So for me, I just want to understand, as an expert, do you think the police people have the responsibility here? And you're talking about all of these investigations in Gifty Lama.
Responsibility for what?
But can you do, as a professional person, you go and do an assessment and you advise. So at that point in time, the police must have realized that the threat that you have, just take 2 private security, they can be able to address the threat that you have. And that did not address the problem. Somebody still went in and killed one person, wounded the other one, and almost killed her. So did the police give her a wrong advice? That's my question.
Thank you.
You spoke earlier about the issue of investigation around Gifty Lama. Is that a good report that said that these 2 adult people were educated at the level of auditors, at the first revenue authority we have in the country, that they die of carbon monoxide in a vehicle? Is that a report from your professional background that tends to scrutiny? So I just wanted you to be able to comment on these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me take the last caller, then we'll start with you, Alfred. Percy. Go ahead, Percy.
Yeah, Dennis, I'm sorry. This is my first time calling, and I don't believe I really call on these shows, and I just listen to you guys. But this guy, Alfred,
call your phone name, please.
Percy Emerson.
Oh, okay. Oh, Emerson, go ahead.
Yes. So I have serious disagreement, and I sent a question of Alfred Johnson, in particular. With some of his assertion, I just think it's wrong. For somebody who is a law enforcement practitioner. I found problem with your now you guys are in big trouble. What you said.
Which one specifically?
First of all, my disagreement has to do with first. You talking about the police, arguing with the lady. Okay? This lady has reached out to the police. And first and foremost, you should understand this first. How did the police get to know that pepper spray was used in the house? Because she said it. She told them. Okay? So let us go back to these things. Let us go back now to coming up or to looking into what Councilor Verdia said. Okay, because he exposed this thing. He said it. And he's in America. Because there are people there with these people who are doing it. And some of these people disagree with it, with what's going on. They are making a call to people because they are afraid. They don't want these things happening. They are making a call. You think Verdia is a magic man? He's not. Okay, you got a value or however you call it. I don't want to, mispronounce his name. They told you it was pepper spray. This man is telling you, as a law enforcement practitioner, you see the man's eye, you see the black, you see the redding around his eye. The redding is around his eye. You see the bruising after when someone is bruised. This man telling you in 1993, you have an eye problem from 1993 up to today's date. Come on, my man. You're a law enforcement practitioner. I'm not picking on you, bro. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm not picking on you as a person, but I just, I'm on the medical field myself like yourself.
Right. No, Emerson, what specifically he said that you disagree with? I didn't get it.
I just told you what he was saying about the woman not coming forward with information.
Okay, all right.
Who knows that? I disagree with that because she, first of all, say that. How do you get to know that there was pepper spray used? Because she said it.
Thank you.
But the fact of the matter is, she doesn't have trust in the police anymore to keep talking to them. She doesn't have trust in them. The entire country, no trust. You're not talking about where the president is on any kind of matter. We should be talking where's the president today? Where's the president? Where's the leader of that nation? What has he said? He has not even extended his condolences to the family. For Christ in heaven's sake. This man not even said one story. Is he waiting to get into his church? One Sunday went by already. I was expecting to go to his church and say something. That maybe she was sleeping with somebody, or maybe somebody went to sleep with her and killed her there too. Or maybe she was bombing her to fight.
Thank you, Emerson.
These are the kind of exceptions the man can come up with. I never analysis. Or maybe he was bombing her in the heart, was fighting.
Yeah.
These are things we're not picking on these people. But the society has to change.
Thank you, Mr. Emerson.
So I'm sorry, Alfred. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go too much on you. I'm very sorry, but it just hurts when I see somebody, somebody who's supposed to have a concrete knowledge about the subject matter, and not really exploring.
Thank you.
Myself, but the way you're going, it's just not hard for me. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Don't take offense. It's just a conversation. And Mr. Chad, thank you for the show. And the rest of the panelists, I'm sorry, you guys.
Thank you.
You guys have done a fabulous job.
Thank you, Percy. All right. Those are our callers. Let me get offer your response, and then we're going to go to our Tabata session.
So Dennis, the elders say when trees fall on tree, the topmost tree is first removed, and we'll go to the next, and we'll go to the next. So trees are falling on trees here. Let me first address the brother when it comes to me saying those possibilities. In investigation, I'm sorry, is Dennis here?
Go ahead.
Yeah, in investigation, Dennis, when something happens, you look at the individual to whom that thing happened. You look at that person's entire life and try to explore the possibility, the possible motives. The people in her lifestyle will work as a senator, or work as an election commissioner, or work as a chief justice, or work as working with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I believe that. You look at the Whether the people who have been to her house, is this a crime of opportunity? When she had workers, she had contractors to her house. Is this one of the contractors? She had young girls in the house. Is this one of the boyfriend or girlfriends? Boyfriends involved. Is it a girlfriend? It sounds crazy, but when you have this crime, you put all these possibilities on your board and you start working from that broad spectrum to narrow it. So we're not going to leave anything out when you're investigating. You don't leave anything out until you can have a point to focus on and narrow your investigation. You entertain almost every possibility that exists that could be the reason why this thing happened to her. So me mentioning boyfriend does not mean to say the girl boyfriend did that. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm telling you that's one of the possibilities that could be entertained, even though it may be remote or far-fetched, but it's a possibility, and we have to entertain that because we don't want to narrow the focus of our investigation until we have a reason to do that. Now, he also said something about pepper spray. Councillor Gloria Mususka at no point told the police about pepper spray. She said that she apparently said that to members of the media, not to the Liberian National Police officers. And when you look at the police statement, there was nothing mentioned in the police statement as it relates to pepper spray. That pepper spray reference came from the media. It did not come from the LNP. Now, also, when he says something about trusting the police, I'll be the clear person to tell you that I don't trust the police entirely. LNP has a history of trust issue. But like Ms. Fambulen said, there are still good people in LNP that are doing a good job. And we cannot just throw everybody on the bus. So we have to give them the benefit of the doubt where we think is appropriate and deal with them where we think is inappropriate, they are not acting well. He comes to the eye issue. Dennis, every 6 months I go see my eye doctor. And you know why? Because in 1997, one guy they called Abraham, we were fighting one night, our family arguing, that man was gonna be right here in my eye. Every 6 months I have to see my eye doctor. So there are possibilities exist. All these things can be explained. And until you can have a counter argument to these things, you have to entertain it. You cannot just say, oh no, they're not true. And you don't have anything to back your claim. You can't, because at the end of the day, this is evidence-based. It is not about feelings. It's not sentimental. You have to go through the prosecutorial process. And if you don't gather your evidence the right way, what happens is when you go to court to prosecute this, it will be like egg spill on your face. If this person has a good lawyer, they can challenge every evidence you present, and this evidence will be kicked out of court, possibly. So you cannot operate with sentiment. Now, when it comes to somebody saying about Councillor Scott, why we say Councillor Scott's story is getting more attention than anything else. Let me give you this example. When we working here, suspect young gang members shoot each other, pop, shots fired. We go out there, one gang member and another gang member. We go there, try to investigate. That gang member tells them, oh man, get out of here, blah, blah, blah. We're not dealing with you. We investigate it as best as we can because the gang member will not cooperate. That's not shocking to the conscience of the people because these are two gang bangers hurting each other, shooting at each other. However, when a crime is committed against a child, 5, 6, 7-year-old child who gets shot, like there was a case here where this, I think, 6-year-old got shot and he's not going to work for the rest of his life. I'm telling you, the media attention that got, we had to devote resources to that. We had to put out a reward money for that. Also, when it comes to high-profile people, when the home of Gloria Mususka gets attacked, a woman who has gained relevance in the Liberian society, and you don't do something about it, what happens is it becomes an issue of public trust and public concern, because the public will be there. If Gloria Mususka can get attacked, what about me? Or if this child who is very innocent can be attacked and the police did nothing about it, what about me? So if you don't approach these things the way it's supposed to be approached, you create an issue with public trust. And when the public does not trust your ability to provide security, they take matters into their own hand. And somebody said something about she's speaking to everyone with but the public. Now, the initial labs, somebody talked about the initial labs in investigation. Yes, LNP had initial labs selects the house. That house should have been secured. I can almost tell you now, In a serious country, any evidence obtained from that house at this point that was not initially obtained, and you left all those people in that house, I don't see that evidence being admissible in the court of law. So that's a serious lapse in judgment. It impacts their investigation, because what happens now is they'll find new evidence, new route to go to get evidence. However, it does not mean that's the end of the gingerbread bread for that investigation. They can still find a suspect, they can still develop new evidence and come up with it. But when it comes to that house, anything obtained from that house at this point that was not initially taken out of the house is subject to serious challenge during the prosecutorial process.
Thank you. Thank you. I just need one more person to respond to our callers, and then we go to our Tabata session.
Dennis, let me say something about the competence question. I mean, I always say, Liberia is a whole country, and there's no way anyone can suggest that. Now I think the census is 5-some million people. Everybody is incompetent. I have worked with very, very competent, highly, highly competent professional Liberians who who didn't leave the country. They lived there, they trained there, they went to school there, right? But this problem about the police LNP being under-resourced and the way they've handled investigation is about public trust, confidence. It's about, that's what I spoke about, confidence in the police. You can be competent, but you can, handle an investigation in such a way that doesn't invite confidence, and the public doesn't trust the process. That is problematic anywhere in the world. I mean, here in the U.S., it's always the question around how the FBI or police they've handled a particular situation, right? And in our context in Liberia, there are a lot of times where observers, you talk to experts who know these things, and the way cases have been handled, or even the homicide investigations, the way they've talked about the evidence, the way it's become political theater, you can almost suddenly say, look, either the communication folks, the media strategy, or just how the whole investigatorial process has been handled publicly, it leaves a lot to be desired that the public, like, okay, I don't know, the LMP, you can call you call 911 when something happens, you want the cops to show up. Hopefully they're not coming to shoot you up, they're coming really to protect you. That's what you want in every society, right? But we can't sit there, I can sit there and say that every case that I've seen in the last 3-4 years that the LMP has handled, even before that, during President Salif time, there've been situations where they didn't exude confidence and public trust. They didn't attract public trust, in my estimation. And that's really where the issue that I spoke about is. It's not, to impugn everyone in the LMP or every professional organization or group in Liberia as incompetent. It's not possible. The whole country can be incompetent. But the onus is on you to demonstrate competence, to demonstrate your impartiality, to demonstrate professionalism, that a job you're doing it for nothing else except to protect the citizens, except to be, independent, except to be professional. If that doesn't happen, it's not showing as a problem, then that problem has to be addressed.
And then as quickly, I just remember something. We talk about the Abba Peter and Gifty Lama's investigation. You see, I was one of those who were very critical of LMP. I have been critical of LMP almost all of their investigative work. The one that there was some armed robber they got, and they brought his body. They did a press conference next to his body, and they were playing with the weapons and the evidence. And I'm like, it was just difficult to imagine. Almost all of LMP's investigation, at least from the initially, has been handled badly. The Gifty Lama, there is no reason why you should have a vehicle where people die in, and then you have somebody, an officer. Yeah, we will have the vehicle too, but you had an officer got in the vehicle, the front seat, and started driving it. That's destroying evidence right there. You're destroying evidence right there. If there's any evidence, it's been destroyed. You have a case where there was a guy who was killed next to a train track. I think it was a law enforcement officer who was killed next to a train track, and everybody was handling the body. There is no guarantee that the suspect who killed that guy was not involved in handling his body. You had the issue of Princess Cooper, the way they handled the Princess Cooper's investigation. There are so many instances LMP have box investigation. So like Mr. Sally said, it is incumbent upon LMP to demonstrate a level of confidence that is required. However, when certain investigations are done and you see the report, until you can have counter proof to show that until you can have something substantive, something very credible to say this investigation was done wrongfully and this evidence points to something else, there's not much you can say. You cannot go out there accusing people based on innuendos and feelings. You can't do that, because in the end, you are undermining public trust based on what? Nothing more than your feelings and some sort of political agenda. We can't do that. That's something I'm not going to do. And that's what people want us to do. I'm not going to do that. I will speak based on evidence. I will speak based on facts. I'm not going to speak based on sentiment.
Thank you, Sergeant. At this time is fast spent. We have 10 minutes to close the show. Let's discuss our Tabata of the week. And after you've been here before. Oh no, not on. So where is Mr. Gonglo? So Mr. Salim, let me start with you for the Tabata of the week.
I don't know. I mean, let me think. So I don't know if it qualifies as a Tabata, but just before I came on the show, I saw a Facebook post, and there was a picture of Senator Snow of Bummy County, just, smiling, and, you could tell something exciting was happening with him or around him. And people were commenting that he just found out that Western Cluster, the company, has deposited the money in Bummy County's account. Today, I think that news just happened. So basically that his negotiation has paid off. And others were saying, so now it's time for him to, engage in corruption, and the people of Bummy County will not benefit. And that just how that whole Western Cluster issue has been handled. And now that the funds are apparently, I don't know whether that is really, it was truthful, but apparently the funds are actually now available that should go to the citizens. We'll see what happens.
Thank you. Dr. Duke, what's your Tabata of the week?
My Tabata is the whole week. Everything that happens this week, everything that goes on, every time I turn on TV or look at the internet, every day there's something going on. So this whole week is a Tabata.
Carl, is it a whole month for you?
Stop putting me on mute. Let's see. I have so many things, but one thing is someone sent me a clip of Monrovia City Police saying that they have a right to bear arms, not a legal right, and that the law wasn't important. What was important was what laws in other countries state. And because in other countries, municipalities have the right to bear arms and have their own police, therefore Monrovia City Police should bear arms outside of the law, outside of Liberia National Police, which is just absurd. You want that? Go to your lawmakers, go to the representatives that cover, and Montserrado County senators, and go to the representatives that cover the city of Monrovia, and have them pass a bill for you to carry arms. They're not doing that. Instead of just jump out and carry arms because they say circumstances demand it. And this man is saying this on a video in front of the country, and no one arrests him. No one comes there and questions him. And it's dangerous. And so my Tabata is for, people to be holding these crazy ideas in their head that if the mayor gives you a job as basically a security guard, that you are now, equivalent to NYPD or LAPD or something. Liberia has a national police force, period. Until the law changes, that is what it is.
Thank you. Few announcements here. Tomorrow we have the literary hour, the Women, Literature, and Life. The literary hour with Jackie Sire and Dr. K. Moses Nawe comes on every Friday at 6 p.m. Also at 8 p.m. we have Debate Night Friday. Tomorrow on Debate Night, we're going to be talking about Spoon CEO steps down, even though he himself says step back. He didn't use the word step down. We're going to talk about that in a debate, and then the women protest at Capitol Hill and all the things in between. Watch Friday night debate on Focus on every Friday at 8 p.m. On Saturday at 3 p.m. on the FOL Marketplace, we're going to be talking about mining concessionaires in Liberia. All these mining concession agreement. What is the role of these mining companies, their responsibilities, and how or if Liberia benefits from these companies? We're going to find that out on the FOL Marketplace. Then at 7 p.m. on Saturday, Forged, Firestone, and Fernando on the Liberia History Channel with presenter Carl and Jabari. I will be there as well. You don't want to miss it. Mr. Gonglo, what's your Tabata of the week?
Well, my Tabata is really the Monrovia City Corporation. I listened to when the city mayor appeared at the police station. I listened to the director for M&E. He's a Philadelphia boy. I listened to him, Dolly. And Dolly was asserting that Monrovia City Police or Monrovia City Corporation has the authority to protect all of Monrovia. And that protection means they are responsible for keeping Monrovia clean, Monrovia residents safe. So all that entails to keep Monrovia safe, whatever it takes to do, the city corporation has that power. And he argued that the journalists should not argue about some ordinance that were enacted in 1950. He's talking about 2023. And at the time, the size of the residents in the city they were probably 5,000, but now you're talking about more than 2 million people. So they are doing everything to fight crime. But here is a big
You're talking about 2 million people. Are you trying to give Grand Crew population to Monrovia now?
Yeah, I don't know.
Go ahead.
So, but here is something that happened under the watch of Monrovia City Corporation, the incident of Gloria Musu's car house. But city police is also not exercising her authority to say, I'm going there. Instead, they haven't been there. They now start by to have the Liberia National Police. I mean, he argued that the National Police is for the entire country and Monrovia City Police is solely for Monrovia, and they have that authority to protect the resident. But they can't go to Gloria Musu's car now. So for me, it doesn't make sense. They only expect but they can't protect everyone.
Alfred, what's your Tabata of the week?
My Tabata, before I address my Tabata of the week, there's just something I wanted to say real quick about that, because in Prince George County, where we are, even though we have municipality police, Prince George County State assume investigative responsibility for certain crimes, like in Hasbro City. Like Bladensburg, when a robber goes out in Bladensburg, we investigate it as opposed to Bladensburg. So maybe that's the kind of arrangement Memorial City has with the LMP. I'm not sure. Maybe LMP investigating kind of happen. I don't know. I'm just saying maybe that could be a possibility, but I'm not sure. But I don't think.
Police operate within the law, and there's no law. There's police and there's laws that govern whether or not the Monrovia City police are not real police by law. They're basically just security guards. They just call themselves police. They don't go to the police academy. They're not legally police in Liberia.
Okay, I'm not.
That's why they're not allowed. They don't. Yeah, they're just security. Go clean. Make sure people cleaning up after themselves and stuff. So I just wanted to say that. It's not
that's it. But I get it. Then that even makes the point. Maybe that even makes the point even more pronounced why they can't go to Gloria Councilor Scott's house to investigate, because they don't have that investigative responsibility. And LMP is the one who assumes investigative responsibility of these kind of things. But to go to the question, I think we're all going to beat Monrovia City Police today, because my own Tabata of the week that then too, it was shocking to me to see the director of Monrovia City Police, the communication director of Monrovia City Police, and the man accused of being involved in the situation at the Sky House, sitting there, and the Monrovia City Police talking for the man. That the man more on a peace bomb. Now my own Tabata of the week there.
Yeah. And what about the guy who is like imitating Koji when he's talking?
Yeah. Like what I'm special coaching.
Yeah, I'm like, what? Wait a minute. My Tabata of the week is in the house. I think they were having a hearing today, and I don't know the representatives. I don't know. I could call that out of order. Someone will make a point, and by the time they finish talking, by the time they sit down, they start making joke or on their phone. It's like they're not even paying attention to anything. I'm like, who are these people? What are they doing? To me, that's complete Tabata. Our viewers too, they have their Tabata of the week, and some little more Tabata than the others. Let's see. Elvis Morris said, my Tabata is the Nigerian election. Elvis believe it's not free and fair. Sam Wallow, my Tabata of the week is the number of Liberians who are still unwilling to stop and think before aimlessly following fairy tales made up by people who sit in other places for reasoning that are unknown. Little more clarity, Sam.
You put in more Jehovah.
Emmanuel Brown, my Tabata is hearing that Councillor Gloria, who is renowned lawyer, is refusing to speak to the LMP and has also instructed members of her household to do the same. He raises eyebrows. Those are the few Tabata that I can see right now. Well, thank you so much. This guy said,
I send the method now objective.
yeah, okay. All right, this one I was looking for. Gwen John Smith. My Tabata is the police chief saying under oath that they took the gun from the MCC police months ago, but instead he comes stepping in with the gun in his holster. Maybe that's one reason why people are not trusting the police. Well, thank you so much for the time. Oh, that's the same Tabata. All right. Thank you so much. Let's use the last 3 minutes, no, six minutes. So we use 30 seconds each for our closing comments. Let me start with Carl.
Okay, so I just want us to try to put aside, I see a lot of unnecessary division and anger, and we have to graduate from this hyper emotional state and be able to look at ourselves and our fellow citizens with kindness and empathy and support. The more you think positive, the more you seek solutions, the more you seek to understand, the better things are. Let's seek understanding, let's seek knowledge, let's seek to correct and not condemn. That doesn't mean that we don't criticize, that doesn't mean that we don't point out flaws, but the emphasis should be pointing out the flaws for the purpose of seeking a solution. We're able to do these things that we see other people doing. We're able to do these things ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Gonglo.
Well, it's been an interesting night. But here, what I will say quickly. We've seen the election in Nigeria. We are hearing the cries of the opposition. I just listened to Peter Obi this evening. He said he can prove that he actually won the elections. Okay. And he started to prove. He started giving instances where his votes were taken away. But that's a side commentary. Today, the guy who is alleged to have won a fraudulent election, unfortunately, is going to be the president of Nigeria probably for the next 4 years or the next 5 years or whatever that term is. I think it's instructive for Liberians for us to learn from this. Our country is not Nigeria, but is Nigeria-like in many ways because there are many poor people in Nigeria and there are many poor people in Liberia. We need to do something. For Liberia to progress and not to follow the path of Haiti, let us take steps to elect someone who can actually act and don't act like we are and don't act like past government. Somebody who will fundamentally change the system. All of what we're doing, the conduct of the police, how they fight crime for decades. The police has got no crime lab. The police has got no forensic lab. Police has got no forensic trained intelligence, detectives, and all of that. For nearly 200 years, it speaks volume that we need to change course here. Let's elect someone who will fundamentally change how investigations are done as well.
Thank you. Mr. Salif, first, Jimmy said my tabata of the week is when will Liberian prioritize professionalism? Anything short of that will always result in mediocrity. Mr. Salif, you're closing. 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. I think we can learn from the Nigerian election. The BVR that was used in Nigeria, based on my reading, it was only tested during off cycle. It was not a nationwide presidential cycle. And then, so during on election day, we're seeing some of the allegations coming from the opposition side, directing, finger pointing at how, votes were counted, how votes were reported, just some of the challenges that seem to have been largely on the part of the Independent Electoral Commission, the electronic platform and that software. Liberia, we can learn from that. We haven't piloted the BVR that our NEC intends to use. It's a major concern. If we can learn anything from the Nigerian process, I think, I don't know if we have that time to pilot, but I'm for all digitization, digitize everything, the economy, commerce, government is good, but technologies have the downfalls. And in a fragile system like ours, if we don't pilot that, it could ferment. It doesn't bode well for peace and confidence in the electoral process.
Thank you. Dr. Dukley, you're closing, sir.
Regarding elections, I think our problems are a lot bigger than Nigeria's problem. And we are walking into a chaos. And then you couple that with the fact that there's this atmosphere of fear. Former soldiers, former kids who were fighting. I wanted to say something at the beginning, that we had a chance to change this country. Why? We are still reeling from the war. The two groups that went to war, Samuel Doe and Charles Taylor, he brought them together into a government. And that should have been the recipe for national reconciliation, right? It should have been the end of it. Say, okay, we who fought each other, we are together now, let's sit and work. But that, what happened? He just used it as political tool. And the whole country is upside down. Today I was watching a woman at the Capitol. That's where I wear my black shirt. And there's a sentiment of fear. People don't know who to trust. They don't trust the government. They don't trust the police. You ask Madam Scott, Mrs. Scott, why don't you talk to the police? She called the police twice. She said the people came to my house twice. And the night she was attacked, it took them 2 hours to get there. Of course, if neighbors went in, this is Monrovia. Neighbors know you. They say yes. They came and sympathized with her. Will she talk? Of course. But I'm sure there are good policemen, there are good investigators in the Liberian police, people who are professional, who know how to do their job, who can hopefully take off the political hat and become professional and resolve this issue and say, you know what, you can trust the police. You will go into elections, we protect everyone so that people can go to sleep at ease and wake up and not worry about somebody stabbing them, somebody shooting at them, and then say, oh, it's somebody else. Maybe it's your boyfriend or your girlfriend who mad at you and shot you. So we have big problem. But elections-wise, I think we have a bigger problem than Nigeria.
Thank you. Sergeant Johnson, you got the last word.
Yeah, Dr. Dukley said something that just reminded me of the assessment that LMP did at Councilor Scott's house. Like I said, on other platform, I think they dropped the ball on that point. I believe that they should have had officers there to her house at least for the next week or two, based on the information that she provided and the fact that she was attacked on 2 occasions. They should have had officers there, even though she provided an assessment and told her that she could get a private security, and she did get a private security. But I think officers should have also been assigned there to at least enhance the security. And I did say that to Honorable Sudu last night or night before when I spoke with him. So you guys dropped the ball on that point. So I just want to make that point. On that, you guys dropped the ball on that end, and I just want to make that point. But to just close, I mean, it's an opportunity. I'm like a toddler in the wood with all these great minds on here. These are people that I've heard about, people who have earned their stripes in the Liberian society, and it's just, I'm honored to even be on the platform and then to even have my opinion be heard by them. It's an honor, it's a privilege, and I don't take it lightly. And I hope to have another opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank my panelists. There's the best paneler you can find anywhere. As long as you don't have anything to disprove what I'm saying, you have to agree and tell me who can do it better than here at Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. Thank you again. I want to thank our viewers, even those who are going to watch later, those who call in, those who commented. We're reading your comments. And one thing you should know that your comments help to enrich the discussion. I read your comments and I try to mix them up in the question that I ask. I'm that good if you don't know. So thank you again for always commenting. We are using your comments to enrich the discussion. Trust me. Thank you again to all of you. On that note, we're going to end with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Have a good night.
Dennis, quickly, I'm just looking at the television here. The British MP, Prime Minister, has congratulated Tinubu. You know, I mean, congratulatory messages are coming from European country.
President, we are already congratulated him.
So we was the first African leader. So
right.
I mean, this is starting.
This is a new show. You started a new show.
It's very sad.
Has to be maintained.
We are all Liberians, gentlemen. Whether you believe the Nigerian election was the worst or the best, we are all Liberians.
We are all Africans.
We are
Liberians.